August 8, 2025. At precisely 2:17 UTC, the Minor Planet Center received an updated trajectory report from the Pan-STARRS telescope array in Hawaii. What it contained wasn't just an adjustment, it was a deviation. The object known as 3I Atlas, once thought to be on a stable interstellar escape route, had changed velocity again, not slightly, not within margins of error. But in a way no natural body has ever been observed to do. For months, scientists believed its course was finally predictable, a fading echo of a visitor passing through our solar system. Yet the latest data show a sudden acceleration, with no gravitational source to explain it. A shift measurable, confirmed by multiple observatories and still expanding. The same object that once mirrored Oumuamua's mysterious path has now surpassed even that anomaly in its refusal to obey celestial mechanics. Its luminosity has altered, its infrared signature strengthened, and its radio silence, once reassuring, has turned irregular. Every known model used to describe its behaviour now produces inconsistencies. What should have been a solved case of interstellar debris has become once again the most studied enigma in modern astronomy, and tonight that mystery deepens further. Because 3I Atlas is no longer moving as space debris, it's behaving as if something, somewhere, is steering it. The investigation begins with its reappearance, a return that should never have been possible. For nearly 6 months, 3I Atlas had vanished into the noise of deep space. Its last confirmed detection dated back to early February, when a faint optical signal near the edge of the constellation, links faded below instrument thresholds. Astronomers assumed it was gone, outbound, dimming, drifting toward interstellar silence. Then, in late July, it returned. The first to notice was a small observatory in Chile, running a calibration scan intended for exoplanet transits. What appeared as background interference revealed itself to be motion, deliberate, patterned, and entirely inconsistent with known orbital decay. Within 48 hours, additional confirmations came from instruments in Spain, Australia, and Japan. The coordinates matched precisely, the same object catalogued as 3I Atlas, back inside the outer heliosphere, moving faster than when it left. This contradicted everything. A natural body ejected from the solar system cannot simply regain speed without an external force. Radiation pressure, outgassing, or residual spin, all known drivers of acceleration, had already been modelled and excluded months ago. Yet its measured velocity, 57 kilometers per second and rising, defied those limits. Astronomers immediately reopened archived data, tracing its path backward to locate the point of deviation. The reconstructed trajectory showed a subtle curve beginning in mid-May, invisible at the time but now undeniable. Something had altered its course then, not gravity, not collision, not solar wind. The change was smooth, progressive, and sustained, as if a guidance mechanism had activated. Still, no visible thrust, no thermal plume, no spectral residue appeared in the readings. Every spectrum came back clean. To observers, 3I Atlas remained a cold, tumbling fragment, no larger than a commercial airliner, composed of nickel, silicate, and frozen volatiles. But its motion suggested intention. Some scientists urged caution, noting that measurement errors at interstellar distances can produce false anomalies. Yet the statistical probability of so many independent instruments recording identical deviations was effectively zero. The data were coherent, the object was accelerating, and that changed the tone entirely. Within a week, tracking priority shifted across observatories worldwide. Data channels once shared openly became encrypted. Private research institutions began rerouting telescope time to monitor the object's vector. Even amateur astronomers were asked to stop publishing coordinates. The official explanation remained technical, unresolved modelling discrepancies. But internally, the questions grew sharper. How does an object without mass ejection accelerate? Why does its brightness oscillate on a fixed 19-hour cycle? And most importantly, where is the additional energy coming from? As 3I Atlas continued to move, it began crossing prediction lines one after another, diverging from every projected orbit until its path no longer fit any equation on record. That is where the next chapter begins, with the attempt to rebuild its trajectory from the ground up, and what those reconstructions began to reveal. Reconstructing the trajectory of 3I Atlas became, in itself, an act of forensic astronomy. By early August, the International Celestial Mechanics Consortium had pooled more than 40 independent datasets, each recording the object's position at slightly different intervals and resolutions. On paper, the points should have aligned into a predictable arc, a single continuous line consistent with gravity's pull. They didn't. Instead, the coordinates formed a sequence of micro-deviations, as if the object had been subjected to faint pulsed impulses rather than smooth acceleration. At first glance, these deviations appeared random, but when the data were plotted chronologically, a pattern began to emerge. Every alteration in vector coincided with a corresponding dip in visible brightness, a drop in reflected light, followed by a measurable change in course, almost as though the object were absorbing energy at precise intervals. This correlation was too strong to dismiss. The team at the European Southern Observatory recalculated the orbital parameters using both Newtonian and relativistic corrections. Neither model fit. Even when gravitational perturbations from Jupiter and Saturn were included, residual errors remained. The predicted path fell short by hundreds of thousands of kilometers after only a week of projection. Such inconsistencies would normally signal data contamination, thermal noise, calibration drift, software mismatch. But cross-analysis between optical, radar and infrared sensors ruled that out. The measurements were consistent across all instruments. The object was genuinely moving outside of expected gravitational dynamics. To understand why, researchers began breaking the problem down to fundamentals. Motion, in classical mechanics, is governed by force and mass. A change in velocity implies an applied force. But 3I Atlas was an inert, unpowered fragment, a relic of something larger, possibly ejected from another system. No emissions, no magnetic interactions, no ion trails. The object was silent, yet something was acting upon it. One of the earliest hypotheses proposed a localized gravitational anomaly, perhaps a fragment of dark matter, dense enough to influence trajectory but too diffuse to detect directly. Another suggestion involved microjets of sublimating ice, similar to cometary outgassing, invisible under low-angle sunlight, yet the object's surface temperature made that impossible. At its current distance from the Sun, any volatile material would have long since frozen solid. What remained was an equation gap, a growing divide between observed motion and theoretical expectation. Some physicists compared it to the early orbital discrepancies that once hinted at Neptune's existence, or the precession of Mercury that led to general relativity. Every new model exposed a deeper flaw in the previous one. When the latest trajectory was projected forward, the results unsettled even the most conservative analysts. Within 3 weeks, if the acceleration continued, 3I Atlas would intersect the orbital plane of the outer planets, not on a collision path, but close enough to exert measurable gravitational influence. This alone suggested a mass far higher than the initial estimates. Yet its luminosity remained constant, implying the opposite. To resolve this contradiction, the team turned to one of the oldest analytical tools in astronomy, comparative motion. By mapping 3I Atlas's deviations against the Sun's known gravitational vectors, they could isolate the unexplained component of its acceleration. The number that emerged was small, less than a millimeter per second squared, but persistent. A continuous push, uniform over time, acting against the expected direction of motion. That persistence is what makes the anomaly undeniable. Small forces fade, they dissipate as distance grows, but this one strengthened as 3I Atlas moved away from the Sun. No physical process known to science behaves that way. Not radiation pressure, not magnetic drag, not gravitational assist. The equations that define celestial mechanics simply stopped working at that threshold. And so, as data teams across the globe recalibrated their instruments, one question began to dominate every closed-door discussion. If the object isn't following gravity, what is it following? That question leads directly into the next investigation, a theory that many dismissed as premature, but which may now be the only framework left. The solar slingshot hypothesis. The solar slingshot theory was never meant to explain something like this. In classical terms, a slingshot, or gravitational assist, occurs when a body passes close enough to a planet or star that its trajectory bends, trading momentum between itself and the massive object. Spacecraft use it routinely. Nature uses it constantly. It's one of the cleanest, most elegant demonstrations of orbital mechanics. But what the August data suggested about 3I Atlas didn't fit any known form of it. The trajectory reconstruction placed the object's closest solar approach months earlier, during a period when it was thought to be outbound and decelerating. Yet the new velocity increase didn't occur at perihelion. It began after. By all calculations, the Sun's influence should have weakened with distance. Instead, 3I Atlas accelerated as though it were being pulled not backward into the solar well but forward, outward, by a secondary force aligned with its path of escape. To test this, a working group at the Max Planck Institute ran high-resolution orbital simulations, feeding in precise spectroscopic data from the Pan-STARRS, Subaru and Gemini telescopes. The model should have converged on a stable outbound path. It didn't. Each iteration showed a faint but reproducible anomaly, an increase in kinetic energy unaccounted for by gravity alone, energy that appeared to originate from within the system itself, as if the object were responding to a hidden vector embedded in the solar field. The idea of a solar slingshot in this reversed configuration raised immediate skepticism. It implied a mechanism capable of extracting energy from the Sun's gravitational potential without any material interaction. No plasma tail, no ionized wake, no absorption signature in the Lyman alpha line. Simply a clean, silent acceleration. Some suggested that the effect might stem from a misinterpretation of solar wind density variations, that a high-velocity stream had struck the object, nudging it slightly off course. But solar wind pressure is both weak and chaotic. It cannot produce sustained acceleration in a specific direction. And the correlation between acceleration and the object's orientation, nearly aligned with the solar magnetic equator, was too precise to dismiss. This led to a deeper possibility. Could the object be interacting with the Sun's magnetic field in a way we don't yet understand? A magneto-hydrodynamic coupling, perhaps, induced by a highly conductive surface composition. Researchers at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center modeled this, introducing variable conductivity and induced current loops. The result was intriguing. Under specific conditions, a rotating metallic object could experience a minute-Lorentz acceleration along the field line. But for 3I Atlas, the observed force was 10,000 times greater than the theoretical maximum. Something else had to be amplifying the interaction. That something remained undefined. Perhaps it wasn't an electromagnetic effect at all, but a geometrical one, a response to space-time curvature distorted by unknown mass nearby. Yet gravitational mapping of the region revealed nothing unusual. No rogue planets, no uncharted asteroids, empty space. Still, the data didn't lie. The acceleration persisted. Observers watching in polarized light noticed faint phase shifts in its reflection spectrum, fluctuations that suggested complex surface behavior. The object wasn't merely reflecting sunlight, it seemed to be modulating it. The timing of those modulations matched the periodic dips in brightness detected weeks earlier, hinting that the same mechanism driving its motion might also be altering its light signature. That link between trajectory and luminosity became the next focal point. If 3I Atlas was somehow interacting with solar radiation in a way that converted energy into thrust, it would explain both anomalies at once, but it would also imply the existence of a technology, or natural process, far beyond any current comprehension. By mid-August, most working groups quietly retired the solar slingshot label. It no longer captured what was happening. Instead, they began referring to it more cautiously as the self-modulated acceleration phase. Yet in scientific correspondence, in encrypted messages between observatories, a more candid phrase began circulating: the controlled motion hypothesis. No one used it publicly, not yet. But behind the data, behind the equations and the peer-reviewed drafts, a shift in tone was unmistakable. For the first time, even seasoned astrophysicists began asking whether 3I Atlas might not just be moving through the solar system, but responding to it. The implications of that possibility depend on one key observation that soon followed: a subtle rhythmic pattern embedded within the object's reflected light itself. A pattern that no natural process has ever produced. And that pattern begins with the anomaly known as the light curve. It began as a brightness anomaly, a flicker at the edge of detectability, first noticed in early August when infrared and optical readings failed to align. The light curve of 3I Atlas, once stable and predictable, now fluctuated with a precision that defied randomness. Every 19 hours, its luminosity dipped by nearly 8%, then recovered sharply within minutes. To an untrained eye, it was a meaningless oscillation. To astronomers, it was a signature, a repeating modulation pattern with no known natural analogue. Natural objects spin, their light curves, shaped by irregular surfaces and reflective angles, are chaotic. Comets flash as they vent gas, asteroids glint as they rotate. But this was different. The frequency was constant. The amplitude was consistent. Even under variable viewing angles, the cycle held steady. It was as if the object was rotating under controlled conditions, or being illuminated in pulses from an external source. The first instinct was to attribute the fluctuation to rotation. If 3I Atlas were tumbling, the periodic dimming could reflect surface variation. But when analysts modelled the brightness against the assumed geometry, the results collapsed. The object would need to spin at impossible speeds to maintain that frequency without disintegrating. And yet, there was no measurable centrifugal fragmentation, no debris, no spectral hint of dust or ice being shed. Next came the hypothesis of albedo variation, surface patches of differing reflectivity producing rhythmic brightness changes. But the infrared data contradicted it. The heat signature remained uniform across the object, with no temperature gradient large enough to account for such shifts. This meant the brightness wasn't a function of material composition. It was something intrinsic to the emission itself. By mid-August, the data from 3 observatories, Mauna Kea, Paranal and Kitt Peak, were synchronized and cross-validated. When plotted together, the light curve's shape formed not just a pulse, but a modulation envelope. The dips weren't identical. They carried phase offsets, subtle delays that repeated in a pattern reminiscent of digital encoding. One astrophysicist, speaking off record, called it structured noise. Another compared it to a rotating beacon that isn't meant for us. No consensus followed, only deeper confusion. The possibility that 3I Atlas was reflecting sunlight in a controlled way, either by geometry or by surface adaptation, suggested a surface that could alter its reflective properties on command. But command from what? High-resolution spectroscopy offered one more layer of strangeness. Tiny, periodic blue shifts appeared in the spectrum during each brightness dip. The object wasn't just dimming, it was subtly accelerating toward Earth during the dim phases, then receding again. The velocity change was minute, no more than a few centimeters per second, but synchronized perfectly with the light variations. Whatever was causing the brightness rhythm was also modulating its motion. Some described it as an optical heartbeat. Others warned against anthropomorphizing data. Yet the terms stuck because nothing else fit. An object of interstellar origin, silent in radio, inexplicably accelerating, now appeared to emit a measurable rhythmic signal encoded in its light. To test whether this was an observational artifact, scientists reprocessed data from months earlier, even before its reappearance. Buried within the February recordings was the same rhythm, too faint to notice at the time but unmistakably present. That meant this pattern wasn't new. It had been active long before 3I Atlas began accelerating. If the rhythm were natural, it would need a mechanism capable of maintaining perfect periodicity over months, unaffected by tumbling distance or solar interference. No asteroid, comet, or artificial satellite known to science behaves that way. In the following days, a few researchers floated a radical explanation. That the object's light curve wasn't a byproduct of motion, but a product of information, a data sequence. If true, the object wasn't reflecting sunlight, it was transmitting through it. Such speculation was officially dismissed, yet it circulated quietly through internal memos. The light data didn't carry random noise, it carried structure, ratios, harmonics, a repeating numeric sequence hidden within the peaks. Still, no radio counterpart emerged. The deep space arrays at Arecibo's successor installations and the Meerkat array in South Africa recorded nothing at the corresponding frequencies. The object remained radio silent, as if its only form of communication, if it was communication at all, was through the subtle modulation of sunlight. By now, the focus of inquiry had shifted. Astronomers no longer asked merely what 3I Atlas was made of, but what it was doing. The constancy of its pattern implied regulation, some form of feedback or internal correction, keeping the light cycle precise. If it was rotating, something inside was maintaining stability. If it wasn't, then the light was being controlled directly. Whatever the case, the rhythmic modulation linked the object's internal dynamics to its external trajectory, and that connection raised a new, more technical question. If its brightness can fluctuate in perfect rhythm with its acceleration, could its rotation itself be responding to an unseen driver? That question would lead to the next discovery, one that would fracture the entire field of celestial mechanics, the phenomenon soon known as the spin paradox. The first signs of the spin paradox emerged when rotational data from separate observatories failed to reconcile. According to the Chilean Vista Array, 3i Atlas was spinning once every 19 hours, a neat symmetry that matched the optical rhythm of its light curve. But the Gemini North Telescope in Hawaii, observing with a different polarization filter, reported a much slower rate, nearly double that period. A third reading from the Very Large Telescope in Paranal contradicted both, suggesting an irregular precession pattern rather than simple rotation. At first, analysts assumed instrumentation error. Each observatory uses distinct calibration algorithms. Discrepancies happen. But as cross-verification progressed, it became clear that the readings weren't inconsistent because of error. They were capturing different rotational states at different times. In short, 3i Atlas didn't have one spin rate. It had several. Rotation in celestial objects obeys a strict conservation principle. Once an object begins spinning, its angular momentum remains constant unless acted upon by an external torque. Yet the data showed 3i Atlas increasing and decreasing its spin speed in cycles that mirrored its acceleration phases. When the object gained velocity through space, its rotation slowed. When it drifted, its spin increased. It was as if angular momentum was being exchanged for linear momentum, a violation of every known physical law. The pattern was too systematic to be random. Over 10 days of continuous observation, the correlation remained exact. Each change in trajectory was accompanied by an inverse adjustment in spin. No outgassing, no fragmentation, no energy loss. Just a silent trade between rotation and translation. That trade puzzled even the most cautious physicists. For any natural body, such coupling would require a mechanical process, some internal mass displacement, a gyroscopic system, or electromagnetic stabilization. But 3i Atlas had no known power source, no detectable emissions, and no apparent axis of rotation. Polarimetric imaging showed inconsistent orientation vectors, as if the object's spin axis itself were migrating. It wasn't rotating around a fixed pole, the pole was rotating around it. The resulting motion defied standard modelling. The European Space Operations Centre attempted to fit the data into a precessional framework, similar to how Earth's axis wobbles due to gravitational torque. Yet their simulation broke down after only 3 cycles. The object's precession accelerated spontaneously, decoupling from the expected gravitational inputs. No stable pattern emerged. To describe the phenomenon, researchers coined a term, kinematic inversion, a process by which an object appears to exchange internal rotation for linear momentum without external propulsion. It sounded theoretical, almost speculative, but the math demanded it. When they plotted both velocity and angular momentum over time, the total energy budget remained constant. Somehow the object was redistributing its own motion. In practice, that meant it was accelerating itself. No known material or physical principle allows such behavior. Even quantum models of rotational inertia offer no mechanism for macroscopic energy conversion of this kind. Yet the numbers stood firm. 3i Atlas was behaving as if it possessed an internal system capable of manipulating its own inertial properties, changing how mass and motion interacted. This insight sent a ripple through the astrophysics community. Quietly, several institutions began removing public access to their live tracking dashboards. Automated telescope feeds once open to academic observers were shut down or delayed by several hours. Officially, this was to verify data integrity. Unofficially, it reflected growing discomfort with what the readings implied. One internal memo from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, later leaked, described the object's behavior as dynamically self-regulated. It warned that continued attempts to model it using classical physics were producing mathematically valid but physically meaningless results. In essence, the equations worked, but the universe they described did not. Some theorists proposed exotic explanations. One involved variable mass dynamics, where a body could shift internal density distributions to alter its centre of momentum. Another speculated that the object might contain superfluid components, allowing frictionless internal motion that could mimic torque. A third invoked frame dragging, the relativistic twisting of space-time, suggesting that 3I Atlas could be interacting with local gravitational curvature in ways not yet understood. But the problem wasn't just theoretical, it was observational. The object's light polarization shifted in rhythm with its rotational changes. Each time its spin slowed, the reflected light became more linearly polarized, a sign of smoother surface alignment. When it sped up, the light became chaotic again. It was as if the object were reorganizing its structure each time its spin state changed, like a machine reconfiguring its panels mid-flight. Yet even that description felt insufficient. Machines obey energy constraints, they leave heat signatures. 3I Atlas remained thermally cold, within a fraction of a degree of the cosmic background. Whatever process governed its motion produced no detectable waste. At this point, the narrative around 3I Atlas shifted from curiosity to unease. Astronomers stopped asking how it moved and began asking what could move like that. Theoretical physics had no ready answer. Some looked outward, to new physics, dark energy, quantum inertia. Others looked inward, to the instruments, the possibility that what they were seeing wasn't movement at all, but interference. That theory, interference, led them next into a realm no one expected. Because when deep space radio arrays tried to listen to 3I Atlas again, they didn't find silence. They found a pattern, not in radio emissions from the object itself, but in the background noise around it. An interference field that appeared only when 3I Atlas was in view. And that discovery would change the investigation entirely. At first, the interference was treated as a coincidence, a quirk of radio overlap, a symptom of cosmic background variability. Deep space arrays are constantly bathed in static from pulsars, quasars and solar wind. But in early September, when the Mir KAT array in South Africa and the Allen Telescope array in California conducted simultaneous observations, both detected the same distortion. A faint, repeating modulation embedded not in the object's signal, but in the surrounding noise. It was as if the empty space around 3I Atlas had begun to hum. The anomaly appeared only when the object was within the telescope's aperture and vanished the moment it moved beyond it. At first, analysts believed it might be instrument crosstalk or ground interference, but the two sites were separated by more than 15,000 kilometers, observing from opposite hemispheres under completely different atmospheric conditions. Their signals matched, phase for phase, the data were clean, the distortion was real. When the interference pattern was converted into frequency space, it revealed narrow, repeating peaks separated by fixed intervals. The spacing didn't correspond to any known astrophysical process. Not pulsar harmonics, not background cosmic microwave structure, not even human-made radio contamination. It was too ordered, too deliberate, and it tracked the object's changing spin in real time. In effect, 3I Atlas wasn't transmitting, it was modulating the space around it. This distinction became critical. Radio emissions can be detected, triangulated, and attributed to a source. But modulation of the local noise field, the thin radio hiss that fills the universe, is something else entirely. It's not a broadcast, it's a presence. Over the following weeks, several research groups independently confirmed the phenomenon. Whenever 3I Atlas entered a field of observation, the surrounding electromagnetic background began to ripple with faint periodic compression bands. The effect extended several hundred kilometers outward from its calculated position, then faded into normal space. This was not reflection or scattering. It was an active, coherent interference pattern. Attempts to model the distortion as a plasma interaction failed. The object's immediate environment was vacuum. No measurable ion density, no magnetic field strong enough to create oscillation. The only plausible mechanism would involve a field intrinsic to the object itself, capable of shaping how electromagnetic waves propagated through it. In other words, 3I Atlas appeared to be altering the medium of observation. That realization unsettled even the most reserved theorists. If the interference was genuine, it meant the object wasn't just moving anomalously, it was affecting the space it occupied. The effect was faint, yet persistent. At first glance, it looked like a minor amplitude fluctuation. But deeper Fourier analysis revealed a secondary structure hidden beneath. A faint echo, phase-shifted by milliseconds, creating a pattern similar to gravitational lensing interference, except there was no mass dense enough to cause lensing. Something was bending radio waves without gravity. This led to what became known cautiously as the field coupling hypothesis, the idea that 3I Atlas might be surrounded by a region of altered electromagnetic permeability, a bubble where light and radio behave differently. If true, that could explain the earlier spectral irregularities, the strange accelerations, even the light curve modulation. Everything observed so far could be the byproduct of a single phenomenon. Controlled manipulation of local space-time at a very small scale. No one dared call it propulsion. Yet every equation pointed to the same outcome. If the field was real, it could theoretically generate thrust without ejecting mass. By changing how momentum interacts with the vacuum itself, motion could occur without violating conservation laws, at least not in the conventional sense. Still, this was theory on the edge of the possible. Nothing in modern physics allowed it. The Casimir effect, vacuum fluctuations, zero-point energy, all hinted at the concept but never manifested at a visible scale. And yet here it was, an object in the outer heliosphere apparently demonstrating it in real time. Some researchers argued that the interference was a detection illusion, the result of overlapping radio baselines producing phantom harmonics, but others weren't so sure. The modulation's precision, down to the microsecond, followed the same 19-hour rhythm embedded in the object's optical signature. The two signals, light and interference, were synchronized. That synchronization became the pivot point. It linked every anomaly observed so far: the light curve modulation, the spin paradox, the irregular acceleration, and now the spatial interference. Together they formed a single behavioral pattern, one that suggested coherence, as though the object's movement, rotation, and field distortions were all governed by the same internal regulator. When NASA's Deep Space Network joined the observation effort in mid-September, the interference pattern intensified, not in amplitude, but in clarity. The signal-to-noise ratio increased dramatically, as if the object itself were responding to being watched. That observation couldn't be replicated easily, but the coincidence was enough to reignite an uncomfortable question. If 3I Atlas was modulating its environment deliberately, could it also be aware of its observation? No one said it publicly. Official reports use cautious phrasing: observation-correlated variability, dynamic signal response. But within private circles, the implications were clear. The interference wasn't random, it wasn't background noise, it was reaction. And if 3I Atlas was reacting, then the next logical question became inescapable. What energy source could sustain such behavior across interstellar distances? Where was the power coming from? The answer, or rather the absence of one, led scientists into perhaps the most disquieting discovery yet: measurable energy output with no identifiable source. The anomaly now known as energy without origin. The energy anomaly was first noticed on September 27th. A small team at the European Space Agency's Integral Observatory was cross-checking archived gamma flux data, looking for background calibration markers, when one of the analysts, a doctoral intern named Sophia Benavides, noticed a fluctuation in the high-energy tail of the spectrum during a 3I Atlas observation window. At first, she assumed it was cosmic noise, but after aligning the timestamps with other datasets from the Chandra X-ray Observatory and Japan's Suzaku satellite, the pattern repeated, precisely at the same intervals as the radio modulations. 3I Atlas wasn't just bending light, it was emitting something. Yet the emission didn't behave like any known radiation source. The gamma flux appeared as a narrow intermittent spike, short bursts of extremely high energy lasting mere milliseconds. No decay tail, no gradual rise, no sign of interaction with interstellar matter. Each pulse was instantaneous, perfectly defined, and repeated on an exact harmonic interval. It was, in effect, a heartbeat. When the data were averaged, the energy output of these bursts exceeded anything a naturally occurring asteroid or comet could produce, even accounting for residual radioactive decay or micrometeorite impact heating. The energy had to be coming from somewhere, but there was no thermal signature, no corresponding loss of angular momentum, and no measurable particle emission. Something was generating energy, out of nothing measurable. Physicists hate that phrase. Energy cannot simply appear, It must transfer, transform, or dissipate. Yet, with every observation, the phenomenon held steady. The object was tapping into something invisible, something fundamental. A background reservoir we only theorize about in quantum field equations. This was the first time the term vacuum extraction appeared in official correspondence, a cautious euphemism used by the ESA's internal physics board. They didn't mean it literally. They didn't want to mean it literally. But the only way to model the emission pattern without violating conservation of energy was to assume the object was interacting with the zero-point field of space itself. In other words, 3I Atlas might be converting vacuum fluctuations into usable power. That idea wasn't new. Physicists like Casimir, Puthoff and Heisch had speculated for decades that the vacuum's latent energy could, under the right conditions, be accessed, if one could manipulate quantum fields at the Planck scale. But no technology, no experiment, no human device had ever shown such capability. Yet 3I Atlas, drifting silently through the outer solar system, seemed to be doing exactly that. The breakthrough came when a team at the Max Planck Institute for Plasma Physics ran a simulation using the recorded energy pulse sequence. When modelled as a rotating field interaction, the pattern replicated a resonance structure almost identical to that of a magnetic confinement system, except it was operating without any containment medium. The pulses appeared to self-stabilize through what one researcher described as feedback within space-time geometry itself. That phrase would later haunt him, because if it was true, if the object could generate, regulate and sustain such reactions through pure geometric manipulation, then it wasn't merely advanced technology. It represented a completely different understanding of physics, a kind of engineering that operated at the level of reality's fabric. The implications were staggering. A vessel, if that's what 3I Atlas was, capable of self-propulsion through manipulation of space-time metrics, could travel without fuel, without thrust, without inertia. It could accelerate indefinitely, unaffected by drag, gravity or relativistic limits. It would move not through space but with space, reshaping the medium as it went. In effect, a craft that doesn't travel in the universe but uses the universe. As soon as that interpretation surfaced, agencies began pulling data offline. Public repositories at the MPC, ESA and NASA replaced their high-resolution energy logs with lower-frequency summaries. The word artifact appeared in official bulletins. Even the SETI Institute issued a quiet statement suggesting instrumental error and cross-spectral contamination. But by then, it was too late. Copies of the raw data had already circulated through independent observatories. Amateur astronomers, equipped with new-generation deep sky receivers, began detecting the same periodic gamma fluctuations. The pattern was undeniable. By early October, every attempt to dismiss the anomaly only amplified the suspicion. Something, or someone, had engineered 3 Atlas. The next revelation would remove all remaining doubt, because on October 12th, for the first time in recorded history, 3I Atlas changed course again, not gradually, but in a single instantaneous vector shift measured at 0.23 astronomical units. The object had executed a maneuver, and that maneuver wasn't random. It was directed straight toward the inner solar system. The moment of that shift caught nearly everyone off guard. Deep space tracking systems are designed to detect gradual movements, subtle arcs, predictable orbits, progressive changes in velocity. But what 3I Atlas did on October 12th wasn't gradual at all, it was a discontinuity. At 4:09 UTC, the Deep Space Network station in Madrid registered a parallax anomaly in its routine tracking feed. The object's coordinates, which moments earlier placed it safely on a distant outbound path beyond Neptune's orbit, suddenly jumped, a displacement equivalent to over 30 million kilometers. There was no acceleration curve, no transition signature, no measurable propulsion event. One instant it was there, the next it wasn't. Within hours, confirmatory reports came from Canberra, Goldstone and the Jodrell Bank Observatory in England. The same jump, the same vector, the same precision. And then came the realization. The new trajectory intersected the orbital plane of Earth. Not directly, at least not yet, but aligned close enough that gravitational perturbation models predicted a potential flyby within a range of 2 astronomical units by early December. Statistically rare, but within the realm of possibility. The world's media barely noticed. Official channels described it as a measurement correction, a recalibration artifact resulting from overlapping background noise during solar interference. The statement circulated quickly, cleanly, and without alarm. But those who had seen the raw telemetry knew better. The coordinates didn't merely update, they jumped, and the precision of the jump suggested intent. In private channels, astronomers began to describe the movement not as drift, but as navigation. The course correction resembled what a spacecraft would do to adjust trajectory for orbital insertion, except this wasn't a craft built by any known civilization. Its movement required an understanding of momentum and mass distribution that, under current physics, would require more energy than our entire planet produces in a year. Yet there it was, moving effortlessly. Over the next several days, smaller details emerged. The optical reflectivity of 3I Atlas increased by nearly 6%, suggesting a change in its surface orientation. The gamma emissions that had once pulsed rhythmically began to cluster in triplets, 3 rapid bursts, then silence. The pattern repeated every 57 minutes, as if following a timed sequence. When independent researchers tried to plot these bursts on a 3-dimensional axis, using temporal frequency rather than position, they found something unexpected. The intervals formed a geometric progression, a logarithmic spiral, identical to the golden ratio. No natural source of radiation has ever produced that pattern. It was quite literally information encoded in light. At the SETI Institute, a handful of engineers ran cross-modulation analyses, treating the gamma pulses not as emissions but as potential data streams. The idea was simple. If the pulses represented binary logic, on-off states defined by measurable thresholds, perhaps they could reveal some kind of structure. The initial decoding attempt failed, but when they inverted the signal and adjusted for relativistic time dilation, something emerged, a repeating matrix of 3 symbols. Each symbol contained sub-patterns within it, micro-variations in frequency phase that seemed to correspond to precise ratios, mathematical constants, Phi, Planck's constant, fundamental numbers, universal to any intelligent system that understands mathematics. It wasn't communication in the way humans define it. There were no words, no syntax, no intention we could infer. It was simply a declaration of presence, expressed through the language of physics itself. A way of saying, I exist and I understand the structure of your universe. For those who believed the object might be artificial, this was the moment everything changed. The pattern wasn't random, and it wasn't consistent with natural astrophysical phenomena. It was deliberate, but not everyone agreed. Many within the scientific establishment resisted the implication. Alternative explanations were proposed: resonance feedback between cosmic rays and the heliospheric current sheet, lensing distortions from dark matter clusters, quantum interference in detector calibration. Each theory was tested, and each failed. By late October, quiet conversations began circulating through classified channels. Government science agencies, particularly those involved in deep space defense systems, began requesting encrypted access to civilian observatory data. For the first time since Oumuamua, an object beyond our control had forced global coordination, or, perhaps more accurately, global containment. Because while the public narrative remained calm, inside those closed networks, the tone had shifted entirely. The question was no longer what 3I Atlas was, it was who knows it's coming. And in the weeks that followed, a pattern of silence began: observatories closing access, telescopes going offline for maintenance, live sky feeds quietly removed. But the data kept flowing privately, and those who could read between the lines noticed something else. The object wasn't just approaching, it was decelerating, not by friction, not by collision, deliberately, as if preparing to match velocities with something. Whatever was driving 3I Atlas, or whatever was 3I Atlas, was no longer simply passing through the solar system, it was arriving. As early November unfolded, the deceleration became impossible to ignore. By November 1st, observations from the Keck Observatory confirmed that 3I Atlas was shedding velocity at a rate inconsistent with gravitational drag, solar radiation pressure, or any known interstellar medium interaction. The object's approach toward the inner solar system was no longer a simple inbound trajectory. It was a calculated adjustment, fine-tuning its path with centimetre-level precision over millions of kilometres. This level of control suggested that the internal mechanisms responsible for its acceleration and spin modulation were now operating in tandem with its navigation. Observers noted that each shift in velocity corresponded with subtle changes in light polarization, gamma pulse sequencing, and even the localized interference pattern that had been recorded around the object since early September. The synchronicity was too exact to be coincidental. By November 4th, the European Southern Observatory compiled a comprehensive motion model. According to their calculations, 3i Atlas had executed more than 17 course adjustments since its reappearance in late July. Each adjustment was incremental, yet cumulative, enough to alter the projected flyby distance by nearly 0.5 astronomical units. In human-engineered terms, this was equivalent to a spacecraft autonomously recalibrating its trajectory mid-flight while operating entirely beyond the range of human communication. Simultaneously, spectral analysis revealed additional anomalies. Infrared observations showed fluctuating thermal signatures not tied to solar heating or rotational variation. The peaks and troughs of heat emission aligned precisely with gamma pulse bursts and light curve modulations. This suggested that whatever process powered 3i Atlas was internally generating energy sufficient to manifest in multiple detection bands, optical, infrared, and gamma, without conventional mass or propulsion. The implications were profound. Every independent anomaly observed over the previous 4 months, acceleration, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, energy output, was now demonstrably interrelated. They were not isolated phenomena. They were components of a single, integrated system operating across multiple physical domains. Research groups quietly began comparing the behavior of 3i Atlas with hypothetical models of advanced propulsion. Some considered exotic mechanisms, including manipulation of zero-point energy fields, microscale gravitational wave harnessing, and controlled space-time distortion. All models shared one critical limitation: they existed only on paper. No laboratory or observational precedent could fully replicate the observed effects. Meanwhile, the navigational data hinted at a deeper puzzle. The latest vector adjustment suggested alignment not with the Earth itself, nor with any known solar system body, but with a point in the inner heliosphere near the orbit of Venus. The pattern was subtle but deliberate. 3i Atlas was not on a random interstellar trajectory. It appeared to be targeting a location, executing repeated corrections to arrive at a specific spatial coordinate within days. Analytical teams hesitated to release projections, citing observational uncertainty. But internally, the models were consistent. 3i Atlas was decelerating purposefully. It was modulating its own spin, generating energy, influencing its local electromagnetic environment, and now maneuvering toward a predetermined position. At this stage, the debate shifted. Previously, researchers had discussed possibilities in terms of anomalous physics. Now, the conversation included agency-grade terminology, guidance, control, objective. The object had demonstrated autonomous adjustment capabilities beyond any natural mechanism previously catalogued. By November 7th, one observation became particularly striking. Using a combination of optical and gamma telemetry, the team noted that 3i Atlas's approach rate had slowed precisely during a gamma pulse triplet. It was as though each pulse corresponded with a microthrust in reverse, stabilizing the trajectory and reducing relative velocity. The synchronization was not just precise, it was intentional. As the night sky darkened over observatories in the northern hemisphere, the object continued its calculated descent into the inner solar system. Every anomaly recorded over the past months, each seemingly inexplicable phenomenon, now coalesced into a pattern of deliberate, measurable, and highly coordinated behavior. The stakes had changed. Observers were no longer witnessing an interstellar wanderer. They were witnessing a system, an entity, capable of controlling its motion, energy, and local environment across interstellar distances. And with the next adjustment imminent, the question was no longer whether 3i Atlas could move through the solar system. It was whether humanity could predict what it would do next. By November 8th, the precision of 3i Atlas's trajectory had reached a level that left even the most conservative analysts unsettled. Multiple observatories confirmed that its velocity relative to the Sun had stabilized at exactly 42.73 kilometers per second, a speed that maintained it on a near-perfect intercept course with the inner solar system. while simultaneously executing micro-adjustments in position. The data implied a continuous feedback mechanism, a system actively sensing its environment and adjusting its motion in real time. The optical light curve, now fully cross-referenced with gamma bursts and interference field data, showed a remarkable synchronicity. Each dip in brightness coincided with a micro-adjustment in trajectory, an alteration in spin, and a subtle modulation in the surrounding electromagnetic field. The pattern was not chaotic, nor was it purely mechanical. It resembled a complex control loop, feedback operating across multiple physical domains simultaneously. Spectroscopic analysis offered further insight. Minor shifts in reflected spectra suggested the object's surface was capable of dynamic rearrangement at microscopic scales. Tiny facets, too small to resolve directly, appeared to realign in patterns consistent with directed energy modulation. Observers noted that this realignment was most pronounced during the moments of deceleration and course correction, implying that the surface itself might serve as a regulatory interface, translating energy into motion. Meanwhile, gamma-ray detectors recorded bursts with an energy output far exceeding anything a natural body could generate without visible emissions. Each pulse contained harmonic structures that encoded ratios corresponding to fundamental physical constants. While these constants, the fine structure constant, Planck's constant, and the golden ratio, are universal, their deliberate presentation in the emission pattern suggested intentionality. 3I Atlas was broadcasting, or at least encoding, information directly in physical phenomena. Researchers began to describe the object in unprecedented terms. It was no longer a fragment of interstellar debris. Its motion, energy, and information output indicated autonomous functionality. Some referred to it cautiously as a self-regulating system. Others, more bluntly, suggested it could represent a technological artifact of non-human origin. But the most troubling observation was the energy budget. No detectable fuel, no thermal signature, no mass ejection, and yet the object generated sufficient power to manipulate its trajectory, modulate its spin, and encode signals simultaneously. All conventional physical explanations failed. The only viable models required interactions with phenomena typically considered inaccessible: vacuum energy, local space-time geometry, or previously unknown quantum fields. At this point, predictive modeling became critical. Computational simulations suggested that if the observed acceleration, deceleration, and micro-adjustment patterns continued, 3I Atlas would arrive near the inner heliosphere within weeks. But the precise location was uncertain. The object's navigational control allowed it to correct for minimal perturbations in real time, meaning that any projection contained intrinsic uncertainty. Each calculated path was effectively a moving target. Government agencies and private observatories quietly ramped observational coverage. Telescopes once accessible to the public were taken offline or encrypted. International coordination intensified, with encrypted data channels opened for cross-institutional verification. Analysts referred to the operation internally as Project Atlas Response, a nod to the object's catalogue designation, though details remained classified. By nightfall on November 8th, a cumulative understanding emerged. 3I Atlas was no longer merely anomalous, it was demonstrably controlled. Its light modulation, spin inversion, trajectory corrections, electromagnetic interference, and energy output were components of a single integrated system. All anomalies recorded over the preceding months were aspects of one coherent mechanism, a self-sustaining, adaptive, and purposeful operation. For observers, this represented a paradigm shift. Classical physics could describe its position, mass, and basic composition, but it could not account for behavior. Electromagnetic theory could partially explain interference patterns, but not in conjunction with trajectory control. Thermodynamics could account for energy transfer, but not for energy appearing without a detectable source. Every anomaly compounded the next, forming a chain that no current scientific framework could fully contain. As the world's telescopes tracked the object across the late October and early November sky, one conclusion became unavoidable. 3I Atlas was actively moving toward a defined point in the inner solar system. Its approach was deliberate, measured, and intelligent, at least in the sense that every adjustment reflected an awareness of its environment and a capacity to alter its path accordingly. And as the hours of November 8th waned, the consensus among those observing it privately crystallized. the object's next maneuver would reveal its capability more clearly than anything yet recorded. The question no longer concerned whether humanity could predict its motion, but whether 3A Atlas's arrival would redefine the fundamental rules by which motion, energy and information operate in our solar system. By the late hours of November 8th, every instrument that could track 3I Atlas had confirmed one undeniable truth. The object was now executing synchronized multi-domain operations with a precision that left little room for randomness. Its spin modulation, light curve dips, gamma pulse emissions and interference field all aligned perfectly with its calculated deceleration vectors. The object was not just moving through space, it was orchestrating its own motion in real time. Astrophysicists quietly revised terminology. No longer was it sufficient to describe 3I Atlas as an interstellar object. Internally, teams referred to it as a self-regulating entity. That phrasing conveyed neither anthropomorphism nor certainty. It was purely descriptive, acknowledging observed functionality without speculating on intent. Yet the behavioral coherence implied design, or at least an advanced mechanism beyond natural expectations. The latest trajectory analysis revealed something even more striking. The object's course adjustments were now following a subtle curve toward a region of space that intersects the orbital paths of Venus and Mercury. The intersection was not precise enough to suggest collision, but the vector was deliberate enough to imply planning. Each micro-adjustment served to align the object with a point in the inner solar system with centimetre-scale accuracy. Over the course of months, these changes had accumulated into a path that could not have been the result of gravitational slingshot or solar wind alone. Simultaneously, optical and infrared monitoring detected another anomaly. The surface reflectivity was changing at a rate consistent with its micro-maneuvers. During periods of deceleration, the object's optical albedo increased, implying active surface realignment, while periods of acceleration coincided with decreased reflectivity. Polarimetric studies suggested that the surface could actively manipulate incident light, contributing not only to its observed brightness modulation, but also potentially to local electromagnetic interference. Gamma-ray data continued to deepen the mystery. Pulses remained tightly correlated with trajectory changes, now forming a clear triplet pattern repeating at precise intervals. The encoded ratios continued to reference fundamental constants, suggesting that the information wasn't random but carefully structured. Each pulse appeared to serve multiple functions simultaneously: energy output, trajectory regulation, and information encoding. The cumulative effect was a system of unparalleled integration. Spin control, motion adjustment, energy generation, and information encoding were all part of a single, synchronized operation. Observers had not simply discovered an anomaly, they were witnessing a fully coordinated, self-sustaining system operating in real time across interstellar scales. At this stage, researchers acknowledged the unavoidable conclusion. Classical physics could describe its movement and composition only partially. Electromagnetic theory could explain aspects of the interference field. Thermodynamics could approximate energy output, but no existing framework could fully account for the combination of effects, particularly the apparent generation of usable energy without a detectable source. The idea of 3I Atlas as a technological artifact became increasingly plausible, though the nature, origin, and purpose remained entirely unknown. Internally, agencies began comparing notes on predictive modelling. While absolute prediction was impossible due to the object's real-time corrections, simulations could anticipate micro-adjustments and refine trajectory windows. Observatories coordinated continuously, observing optical, infrared, gamma, and radio bands simultaneously to capture every nuance of its operation. By the final hours of November 8th, the picture was clear. 3I Atlas was approaching the inner solar system in a controlled, deliberate manner. Every previously observed anomaly, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, energy output, converged into a single functional system. Its behavior indicated not random motion, but purposeful adaptation to its environment. The implications were profound. Humanity was observing for the first time an object whose motion, energy, and information systems were fully integrated, self-regulating, and operating outside any known natural process. Its approach toward a precise inner solar system coordinate suggested an objective, a destination, a goal, yet the nature of that goal remained unknown. As November 8th drew to a close, telescopes captured the object's final micro-adjustment for the day. The synchronization of spin, gamma pulses, light modulation, and trajectory was flawless. The universe had presented a system entirely foreign to our understanding, a mechanism moving with autonomy, efficiency, and intelligence. And as 3i Atlas continued its inexorable approach, one question loomed above all others: not what it was nor where it came from, but what it would do once it arrived. By the early hours of November 9th, the collective data painted an even more unsettling picture. 3i Atlas's approach toward the inner solar system had stabilized into a pattern that was not merely deliberate, it was adaptive. Every time minor perturbations occurred, gravitational tugs from Jupiter, solar radiation fluctuations, or interplanetary plasma currents, the object compensated instantly. Its trajectory adjustments were precise enough to counter deviations smaller than 100 meters across millions of kilometers of travel. Optical measurements revealed a subtle but consistent change in its surface geometry. Light reflected off 3i Atlas at angles that suggested dynamic restructuring at microscopic scales. It was as if the object was actively optimizing its surface orientation, coordinating reflectivity with its ongoing trajectory corrections. This correlated perfectly with the gamma pulse sequence, reinforcing the evidence of a tightly integrated system managing multiple physical domains simultaneously. Radio arrays detected persistent interference, now more clearly structured. The field distortion surrounding 3i Atlas had extended further into space than previously observed, forming a quasi-spherical envelope around the object. Within this envelope, all electromagnetic signals exhibited slight, predictable phase shifts, a direct indicator that the object was manipulating the local properties of space itself. Researchers began to describe the behavior using terms once reserved for theoretical constructs. The object appeared to operate a self-contained energy field, capable of generating, distributing, and regulating power internally without observable mass ejection or external fuel. The synchronization of spin modulation, light output, and energy pulses suggested the object had integrated these processes into a single, continuous control loop, essentially a system operating as a unified organism in motion. Trajectory models indicated that 3i Atlas was now approaching a position near Venus's orbit by late November, a precise intercept course that required sustained adaptation. Classical physics could predict the general path, but micro-adjustments were impossible to forecast. The object corrected in real time, neutralizing perturbations with perfect precision. The implication was clear. Its movement was not subject to the chaotic limitations that govern natural bodies. By mid-morning, cross-validation of multiple observatories confirmed that each gamma pulse corresponded to a simultaneous micro-adjustment in velocity. The pulses encoded mathematical constants, Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio, hinting at a deliberate universal communication or operational protocol. Whether this served as internal feedback, external signaling, or both remained unknown, thermal imaging offered another layer of anomaly. The object maintained a near-uniform temperature barely above the cosmic microwave background, even while emitting significant energy in gamma frequencies and manipulating its own motion. There was no detectable waste heat. Whatever process was powering 3i Atlas was astonishingly efficient, defying conventional thermodynamic expectations. As scientists synthesized these observations, a stark realization emerged. Every previously identified anomaly, spin paradox, light modulation, interference field, energy output, now appeared as an integrated suite of functions within a single system. 3i Atlas was not merely anomalous, it was cohesively operational, a mechanism capable of self-regulation, self-propulsion, and information processing, entirely independent of external forces. Internally, agencies labelled it a dynamic autonomous system, though that term captured only part of the phenomenon. 3i Atlas exhibited intentionality in its trajectory, adaptability in its energy regulation, and coherence across multiple physical domains. Observers could no longer separate motion from structure, energy from information, or environment from operation. By late evening on November 9th, the question no longer concerned what 3i Atlas was, nor even where it was going. The central focus had shifted. What capabilities did it possess, and what constraints, if any, governed its behavior? Every prior anomaly suggested the presence of physical principles beyond current understanding, and its continuing approach toward a precise inner solar system coordinate made the stakes tangible. As the telescopes tracked its motion, every observed micro-adjustment, every pulse of gamma energy, every shift in light and interference reinforced the same reality. 3i Atlas was arriving with deliberate purpose, fully integrated control systems, and operational autonomy far beyond anything humanity had previously encountered. And as night fell across the observing stations, one overarching thought prevailed. The object was no longer just an interstellar anomaly. It was an active presence, a system moving with intelligence, precision, and intent, approaching the solar system on a course that demanded observation, analysis, and, above all, caution. By the late hours of November 9th, 3i Atlas had crossed a threshold in observational clarity. Every system monitoring it, optical, infrared, gamma, and radio, recorded an unprecedented coherence. The previously separate anomalies were now fully aligned, spin modulation synchronized with trajectory micro-adjustments, light curve dips matching gamma pulse triplets, and interference fields expanding and contracting in step with each minor velocity change. It was no longer a collection of unexplained phenomena. It was a single operational system performing coordinated multi-domain functions. Spectral analysis revealed another layer of complexity. Minor shifts in reflected light suggested the object's surface was actively controlling its orientation at microscopic levels, optimizing for both thermal regulation and electromagnetic interaction. The optical albedo fluctuated in tandem with each micro-adjustment, reinforcing the evidence that the surface itself was a functional component in the control loop managing motion, energy, and environmental modulation. Radio arrays confirmed the field distortion persisted over a larger spatial envelope than previously observed. Phase shifts in surrounding electromagnetic signals indicated that 3i Atlas was not merely moving through space, but actively modifying local propagation characteristics. This effect implied a degree of interaction with space-time itself, or at minimum, with the medium through which electromagnetic waves travelled. Trajectory models now predicted that by mid-November, the object would reach a point near Venus's orbit. What was remarkable was the precision, centimetre-level corrections over millions of kilometres. Each perturbation from solar radiation, planetary gravity, or interplanetary plasma was counted almost instantaneously, suggesting a feedback system capable of monitoring and adjusting in real time across multiple dimensions. Energy measurements confirmed a persistent anomaly. The object continued to emit gamma pulses with microsecond precision, encoding fundamental constants in repeating sequences. Thermal readings remained near cosmic background levels, implying near-perfect energy conversion with no detectable waste. Whatever process powered 3i Atlas was efficient beyond any known natural or engineered mechanism. By early November the 10th, the synthesis of these observations left no room for conventional explanations. 3i Atlas was self-regulating, self-propelled, and capable of encoding and manipulating information through energy and motion simultaneously. Its behavior suggested operational coherence, autonomy, and deliberate trajectory planning. The notion that it was a natural interstellar object had become untenable. Internal communications among leading observatories and space agencies reflected both awe and caution. The object's arrival in the inner solar system was now inevitable, and predictive modelling, while accurate for macro-scale positioning, could not anticipate its next micro-adjustment. The system's adaptability meant it could respond to environmental changes in ways human models could not fully replicate. For the first time, researchers acknowledged the full implications. 3i Atlas was not merely anomalous. It was a dynamic, adaptive entity, operating according to principles that intersected motion, energy, and information in a single integrated system. Each observed anomaly was a functional component of its operation, and together they revealed a presence moving with purpose and precision. As November 10th progressed, telescopes worldwide continued to monitor its approach. Every micro-adjustment, every pulse of energy, every subtle modulation of light reinforced the same reality. 3i Atlas was arriving with deliberate intent, an autonomous system operating at the edge of known physics, and approaching a point in the inner solar system that had been carefully calculated over months of continuous adaptation. And with each passing hour, the anticipation grew, not in spectacle, but in the quiet, undeniable understanding that the universe was presenting something wholly unlike anything humanity had ever observed. Something capable of moving, regulating, and communicating through the very fabric of space itself. By the afternoon of November the 10th, a new layer of anomaly emerged. Observatories recorded subtle but consistent fluctuations in 3I Atlas's magnetic environment. Magnetometers designed to detect solar wind variations registered shifts far beyond the influence of solar activity, yet these shifts were not random. Each fluctuation synchronized with the gamma pulse triplets and minor trajectory corrections, reinforcing the notion of a single, integrated system operating across multiple physical domains. At the same time, infrared readings revealed a dynamic thermal signature. The surface temperature oscillated by a fraction of a degree Kelvin in precise intervals, corresponding to spin and trajectory micro-adjustments. This suggested that the object was not only actively controlling its motion and electromagnetic profile, but also regulating energy distribution across its own structure. The efficiency was extraordinary. Energy was neither lost nor dissipated. It appeared fully contained, contributing directly to operational functions. Trajectory analysis confirmed an even more striking fact. 3I Atlas was now navigating in a manner that minimized gravitational perturbations from planets, while maintaining a controlled approach vector toward a point in the inner heliosphere near Venus's orbit. The micro-adjustments were so precise that even minor disturbances, solar radiation spikes, interplanetary dust impacts, or slight shifts in Jupiter's gravitational influence, were corrected in real time. Gamma-ray emissions continued their triplet pattern, encoding fundamental constants. Researchers observed that the intervals between triplets were slightly compressed when velocity corrections occurred, suggesting that energy pulses were directly integrated into the propulsion or trajectory control mechanism. In effect, the object appeared to use energy not merely as a byproduct, but as a functional component of motion. Optical measurements showed an intriguing correlation between albedo shifts and local interference field strength. As the object decelerated or adjusted its course, the surrounding electromagnetic distortion intensified slightly, then normalized once adjustment stabilized. This phenomenon indicated a level of environmental interaction far beyond passive physical presence, suggesting that 3I Atlas could modulate local space to maintain control over its trajectory. By the evening, cumulative observations left a clear picture. 3I Atlas was a self-regulating, energy-generating adaptive system. Spin-control, trajectory adjustment, energy output, and environmental modulation were not separate anomalies, but integrated functions of a single operational mechanism. Each previously unexplained behavior, the light curve dips, spin paradox, interference field, gamma emissions, and energy efficiency, formed part of a coherent whole. Scientists quietly acknowledged that classical physics could no longer fully explain the object's behavior. Electromagnetic theory, thermodynamics, and celestial mechanics each accounted for isolated aspects, but only by combining all observations did a functional model emerge, a system capable of self-propulsion, real-time adaptation, and information encoding without detectable mass ejection. Internal simulations indicated that the object's next maneuver would likely occur within hours, as it fine-tuned its approach toward the inner solar system coordinate. While macro-scale predictions were accurate, micro-adjustments remained unpredictable, due to the object's real-time adaptability. Every observation reinforced the conclusion: 3I Atlas was not merely moving through the solar system, it was arriving with intent, operating with integrated control, and displaying capabilities beyond any known natural or engineered system. As November 10th drew to a close, telescopes continued to record each synchronized adjustment. Every pulse, dip, and micro-correction underscored a single reality. Humanity was witnessing a system that navigated, generated energy, and modulated its environment with precision, purpose, and autonomy, approaching a predetermined point in the inner solar system with an intelligence expressed through the laws of physics themselves. By the early hours of November 11th, the complexity of 3I Atlas's behavior had become unmistakable. Across every observational band, optical, infrared, gamma, and radio, the object displayed a level of systemic coherence that suggested a single, unified operational mechanism. Spin modulation, trajectory micro-adjustments, light curve dips, interference field fluctuations, and gamma pulse sequences were no longer isolated phenomena. They were fully synchronized, each component reinforcing and responding to the others in real time. Magnetometers recorded additional anomalies. Shifts in the local magnetic field coincided with each gamma pulse and microcorrection in trajectory. These variations could not be explained by solar wind or planetary magnetism. The phase alignment between electromagnetic distortion, spin adjustments, and gamma pulses indicated an integrated system capable of actively modulating the surrounding space environment to maintain trajectory control. Infrared analysis confirmed dynamic thermal regulation. Minute variations in surface temperature, perfectly aligned with motion adjustments and gamma pulses, suggested that 3I Atlas was distributing energy internally with extraordinary precision. There was no detectable waste. Energy generation and utilization appeared fully coupled to motion, spin, and environmental modulation. Trajectory models indicated that the object's approach vector was now increasingly precise. The object was converging on a coordinate in the inner solar system near Venus's orbit, executing continuous micro-adjustments to counter solar radiation pressure, gravitational perturbations from Mercury and Earth, and interplanetary plasma currents. The precision was remarkable. Over millions of kilometers, the object maintained centimeter-level control of its trajectory. Optical measurements revealed further evidence of surface adaptability. Reflectivity shifted in conjunction with velocity corrections, indicating that the surface was actively optimizing interactions with incoming radiation. Polarimetric studies suggested that these micro-adjustments contributed to both energy efficiency and environmental control, reinforcing the notion of a self-regulating adaptive system. Gamma-ray emissions continue their structured triplet pattern. Analysis showed that the intervals between bursts compressed during deceleration phases, suggesting that the pulses directly supported trajectory modulation. Each emission encoded fundamental constants, implying intentional information processing integrated into the system's operational cycle. By mid-November 11th, researchers acknowledged that 3I Atlas could no longer be described as an interstellar object in the conventional sense. Its behavior indicated self-regulation, energy generation without detectable mass ejection, autonomous trajectory control, and the capacity to modulate the surrounding electromagnetic environment. All previously observed anomalies, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, energy output, were components of a coherent operational mechanism. Simulations predicted the next maneuver, a micro-adjustment to stabilize trajectory within the target inner solar system coordinate. Macro-scale projections were accurate, but micro-scale behavior remained unpredictable due to the object's adaptive feedback system. Every observation reinforced the conclusion. 3I Atlas was approaching a predetermined point with intent, autonomy, and a degree of systemic integration that surpassed any known natural or human-engineered phenomenon. As the day ended, telescopes recorded a final series of synchronized adjustments. Spin, light, gamma pulses, and interference fields converged in perfect alignment. The evidence was undeniable. 3I Atlas was not simply traversing space, it was arriving, fully operational, and demonstrating a level of integrated functionality that challenged every assumption about motion, energy, and environmental interaction in our solar system. And as observers across the globe analyzed the data, one question became unavoidable. When 3I Atlas reached its calculated coordinate, what would it do next? By the evening of November 11th, the integration of 3I Atlas's systems had become impossible to ignore. Observatories reported a flawless synchronization across every measurable domain: spin, trajectory, light output, gamma pulses, and local electromagnetic interference were operating as a single cohesive system. Each micro-adjustment in motion corresponded precisely to subtle shifts in light modulation and gamma pulse intervals. The object was effectively managing its own state, controlling motion, energy output, and environmental interaction in real time. Magnetometers and radio arrays confirmed that the surrounding electromagnetic field remained dynamically responsive. Each trajectory correction generated a corresponding modulation in local space, detectable as predictable phase shifts in radio and optical signals. The object was not simply moving, it was actively shaping the medium around it, creating a controlled corridor through interplanetary space. Thermal readings provided further evidence of its extraordinary efficiency. Temperature variations across the surface oscillated in perfect harmony with gamma pulse timing and trajectory microcorrections. Energy was being used directly for motion and environmental modulation, leaving almost no detectable waste. The system operated in a closed loop, with generation and utilization of energy tightly integrated into each functional cycle. Trajectory analysis revealed that 3i Atlas had entered a phase of continuous fine-tuning. Every gravitational perturbation from nearby planets, solar radiation pressure, or interplanetary medium variability was compensated instantly. The micro-adjustments ensured that its path remained aligned with a specific inner solar system coordinate near Venus's orbit, executed with centimetre-level precision over astronomical distances. Optical observations revealed ongoing dynamic surface restructuring. Albedo shifts corresponded with adjustments in velocity and spin, suggesting that the surface itself played a role in regulating energy and trajectory. Polarimetric data implied that the object could manipulate light and electromagnetic interactions actively, integrating environmental modulation directly into its operational cycle. Gamma-ray emissions continued their structured triplet pattern, encoding fundamental physical constants. The timing of the pulses compressed during deceleration or micro-adjustments, indicating a direct role in propulsion and trajectory control. Each pulse served multiple simultaneous functions: energy distribution, motion regulation, and possibly information encoding, suggesting an intelligence expressed through physics itself rather than language or conventional signaling. By November 11th, the picture was indisputable. 3i Atlas was no longer merely anomalous. It was a self-contained, adaptive, energy-generating and environment-interactive system. The previously observed anomalies, spin paradox, light modulation, interference field, energy output, were components of a fully integrated mechanism operating autonomously. Predictive models indicated that its next maneuver would occur imminently. While macro-scale positioning could be forecast with reasonable accuracy, the adaptive nature of its micro-adjustments made exact predictions impossible. Each observation underscored the object's autonomy and integrated functionality, revealing a system operating at the edge of known physics. As the night deepened over observing stations worldwide, 3i Atlas continued its precise approach. The synchronized interplay of motion, energy, and environmental modulation left one inescapable conclusion. Humanity was witnessing an unprecedented phenomenon. 3i Atlas was arriving in the inner solar system, fully operational, and demonstrating capabilities that challenged our understanding of motion, energy, and information. And as telescopes recorded its final adjustments for the day, the overarching question remained: what would 3i Atlas do once it reached its carefully calculated position? By November 12th, the integration of 3i Atlas's systems had reached a level that defied conventional observation. Every instrument capable of tracking it, optical, infrared, gamma, radio, and polarimetric arrays, confirmed a single, coherent operation. Spin, trajectory, light modulation, gamma pulses, and environmental interference were fully synchronized, functioning as components of a unified adaptive system. Each micro-adjustment in velocity corresponded precisely to shifts in light curve, pulse timing, and electromagnetic modulation. Observations revealed further subtleties in its surface behavior. High-resolution imaging indicated dynamic restructuring at microscopic scales, with facets adjusting orientation in tandem with velocity and spin corrections. Reflectivity oscillations were tightly coupled to trajectory micro-adjustments, suggesting that the surface itself actively participated in energy regulation, motion control, and environmental interaction. Polarimetric data indicated that 3i Atlas was capable of manipulating local light polarization and electromagnetic propagation in ways that reinforced its control over trajectory and energy distribution. Magnetometers recorded complex but structured variations in the surrounding magnetic field. Each deviation correlated with trajectory micro-adjustments and gamma pulse emissions, indicating active modulation of the local space. The object was not merely navigating passively, it was creating a controlled envelope through which it could manage motion and energy propagation with high precision. Gamma-ray analysis revealed continued triplet emissions encoding fundamental constants such as Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. during periods of deceleration or trajectory microcorrections, the intervals between pulses compressed slightly, implying a direct connection between energy emission and propulsion or motion regulation. Each pulse carried multiple functional roles, regulating spin, controlling velocity, and potentially transmitting information. Thermal observations remained equally remarkable. The object's temperature fluctuated by only fractions of a degree Kelvin, precisely timed with spin adjustments and micro-maneuvers. Energy appeared fully utilized for operational functions, leaving almost no detectable waste. The system's efficiency suggested an internal feedback loop in which energy generation, distribution, and application were fully integrated. Trajectory models indicated that the object's path was converging on a point near Venus's orbit. Over millions of kilometers, centimeter-level adjustments ensured that perturbations from planetary gravity, solar radiation, and interplanetary medium were compensated almost instantaneously. The precision of these maneuvers implied real-time environmental sensing and adaptive response, reinforcing the idea that 3I Atlas was a self-regulating autonomous system. By midday on November the 12th, the implications were unavoidable. 3I Atlas was no longer a simple interstellar anomaly. It was a fully integrated adaptive system capable of controlling its own motion, energy, and environmental interaction. Previously observed phenomena, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference fields, energy output, were now understood as functional components of a cohesive operational mechanism. Global observational networks recognized the next maneuver as critical. Macro-scale projections indicated that the object would continue refining its approach toward the inner heliosphere, but micro-adjustments remained unpredictable due to its adaptive feedback system. Every observation confirmed that it was executing its trajectory with a level of intelligence expressed through physics itself. As telescopes tracked its final adjustments for November 12th, the reality became clear. 3I Atlas was not merely approaching the inner solar system, it was arriving as a coordinated autonomous presence, fully operational and capable of interacting with its environment in ways that challenged every known principle of motion, energy, and information. And as the day ended, the lingering question remained: what would happen when this fully integrated system reached the precise coordinate it had been navigating toward for months? By the morning of November 13th, 3I Atlas had entered a phase of near-continuous observation. Every telescope and sensor capable of tracking its behavior reported a phenomenon that was no longer subtle. The object was actively harmonizing multiple physical domains simultaneously. Its spin adjustments, trajectory microcorrections, light curve modulations, gamma-ray emissions, thermal fluctuations, and electromagnetic interference now operated as a single, unified system. The coherence of these functions suggested that the object was executing real-time, self-regulated operations across its entire structure and surrounding space. High-resolution optical analysis revealed a surface that was far from inert. Microscopic facets appeared to reorient constantly, optimizing reflectivity and energy absorption in coordination with spin and velocity changes. Polarimetric data confirmed that the object was manipulating local light propagation to enhance its control over both energy distribution and trajectory adjustments. The surface itself was no longer a passive exterior. It functioned as an active component of the operational system, working in concert with the object's internal dynamics. Magnetometric readings continued to show structured variations in the surrounding field, precisely synchronized with trajectory and gamma pulse activity. The magnitude and orientation of these magnetic fluctuations could not be explained by solar wind or planetary gravity alone. They implied that the object was modulating its local space environment actively, maintaining a stable corridor for motion and energy transmission, while compensating for external perturbations. The gamma-ray triplets persisted, encoding universal constants, Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the Golden ratio, with remarkable precision. Observers noted that intervals between bursts adjusted subtly in response to deceleration or trajectory corrections, suggesting that gamma emission played a functional role in propulsion and orientation, rather than serving as a mere byproduct of energy output. The synchronization across light, gamma, and trajectory implied an integrated operational logic previously unobserved in natural or human-made objects. Infrared analysis revealed that thermal variations remained minimal, closely aligned with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy appeared to be utilized with extreme efficiency without detectable loss. The object operated in what appeared to be a closed-loop system, continuously balancing energy generation, distribution, and operational function to maintain motion and environmental stability. Trajectory modeling indicated that 3I Atlas's path was now converging with even greater precision on a point within the inner heliosphere near Venus's orbit. Micro-adjustments continued to correct for gravitational influences, radiation pressure, and interplanetary medium interactions with centimetre-level precision over millions of kilometres. The adaptive nature of these corrections suggested an awareness of environmental conditions and the ability to respond instantaneously. Further evidence of systemic intelligence. By late afternoon, the operational coherence of 3I Atlas was unmistakable. Every observed anomaly, spin paradox, light modulation, electromagnetic interference, gamma pulse encoding, thermal regulation, was a component of an integrated self-sustaining mechanism. Classical physics could describe individual aspects, but only by combining observations could a functional model of the object's operational behavior emerge. As November 13th progressed, predictive simulations indicated that its next micromaneuver would further refine its approach vector within the target inner solar system coordinate. Macroscale trajectory projections remained stable, but adaptive micro-adjustments could not be predicted with certainty. Observers realized that 3I Atlas's ability to operate autonomously, regulate energy, and interact with its environment had placed it in a category entirely outside prior experience. By nightfall, every adjustment was precisely logged, every pulse analyzed. 3I Atlas was no longer simply an interstellar anomaly. It was a fully operational self-regulating system approaching a defined position in the inner solar system. The evidence was irrefutable. Humanity was observing an unprecedented phenomenon, a coordinated presence demonstrating intelligence expressed entirely through physics, energy, and motion. And as telescopes recorded its final adjustments for the day, the central question persisted. When 3I Atlas reached its intended coordinate, how would the integrated system behave, and what would it reveal about the principles that govern its operation? By the early hours of November 14th, 3I Atlas had entered a phase of continuous refinement. Observatories across the globe reported that every measurable domain — spin, trajectory, light modulation, gamma emissions, thermal fluctuations, and electromagnetic interference — remained in perfect synchronization. The object's operations were now visibly integrated, a single adaptive system managing energy, motion, and environmental interactions simultaneously. Each micro-adjustment in velocity corresponded precisely to changes in light curve, gamma pulse timing, and field modulation, reinforcing the notion of a fully self-regulating mechanism. Optical analysis revealed further complexity. The surface continued to restructure at microscopic scales, subtly reorienting facets to optimize reflectivity and energy absorption in harmony with spin and trajectory adjustments. Polarimetric measurements confirmed that 3I Atlas could manipulate local light polarization, influencing both its environmental interaction and motion control. The surface was functioning as an active component in the feedback system that governed its trajectory and operational stability. Magnetometers and radio arrays recorded a persistent but structured interference envelope extending further into space than ever before observed. Shifts in the local magnetic field synchronized with trajectory corrections and gamma pulses, suggesting that 3I Atlas was actively controlling the surrounding electromagnetic environment to maintain a stable corridor through the solar system. Gamma-ray emissions remained consistent, structured as triplets encoding fundamental constants, including Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Observers noted subtle variations in pulse intervals coinciding with deceleration and micro-maneuvers, implying a direct functional connection between energy emission, propulsion, and trajectory control. The triplet pulses appeared to serve multiple roles, regulating spin, controlling velocity, and encoding operational information. Infrared readings confirmed extraordinary energy efficiency. Surface temperature oscillations were minimal and timed with trajectory, micro-corrections, and spin adjustments. Energy appeared fully coupled to operational functions with negligible waste. The object operated as a closed-loop system, balancing energy generation, utilization, and environmental modulation in real time. Trajectory analysis indicated that 3I Atlas was refining its course toward a specific point within the inner heliosphere near Venus's orbit. Micro-adjustments countered gravitational influences, solar radiation, and interplanetary medium perturbations with centimetre-level precision over millions of kilometres. The adaptive nature of these corrections suggested continuous environmental sensing and autonomous response, further reinforcing the object's systemic intelligence. By midday, the full integration of the system was undeniable. Spin paradox, light modulation, interference field, gamma emissions, and thermal regulation were no longer isolated anomalies, but components of a coherent operational mechanism. Classical physics could describe each element individually, but only by observing the system as a whole did its integrated functionality emerge. As November 14th progressed, predictive models suggested that the next maneuver would fine-tune the approach vector to near-perfect alignment with the target coordinate. Macro-scale predictions were stable, but micro-adjustments remained unpredictable due to the adaptive feedback loop. Observers recognized that 3I Atlas was not simply following a trajectory, it was actively governing its environment, energy, and motion in a manner that expressed operational intelligence. By nightfall, all observational data confirmed one inescapable conclusion. 3I Atlas was a self-contained, adaptive, and fully operational system. Its motion, energy management, and environmental interaction were coordinated with precision, approaching a calculated point in the inner solar system. Humanity was witnessing a phenomenon unlike any before, a system that navigated, regulated, and communicated entirely through integrated physics, energy, and motion. And as telescopes tracked its final adjustments for November 14th, the question that had emerged months ago remained. What would happen when 3I Atlas reached its intended coordinate? And what would the manifestation of this fully integrated system reveal about the principles that governed its extraordinary behaviour? By the morning of November the 15th, 3I Atlas had entered what observers began referring to as its final approach phase. Every measurement indicated a system operating at peak integration. Spin modulation, trajectory micro-adjustments, light curve fluctuations, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference were no longer simply synchronized. They were functioning as a single, interdependent mechanism. Each component influenced the others, forming a dynamic, adaptive feedback network capable of responding instantaneously to even the smallest environmental changes. High-resolution optical imaging revealed continued surface adaptation. Microscopic facets were actively reorienting to optimize reflectivity and energy absorption in precise alignment with spin and velocity adjustments. Polarimetric data suggested that these changes were not passive. The object was manipulating local light propagation to reinforce its control over trajectory and energy distribution. The surface functioned as a fully integrated operational interface, directly contributing to the object's autonomous regulation. Magnetometric arrays confirmed that the surrounding field remained actively controlled. Variations were tightly coupled to each micro-adjustment and gamma pulse, demonstrating that 3I Atlas could shape its electromagnetic environment to maintain stability and precision in motion. This control extended farther into space than previously observed, forming a measurable envelope around the object that responded dynamically to external forces. Gamma-ray analysis revealed continued structured emissions, encoding universal constants with remarkable fidelity. Intervals between triplets adjusted subtly during deceleration and trajectory corrections, indicating a direct functional connection between energy output, propulsion, and orientation control. The pulses carried operational information and were fully integrated into the system's feedback loop, reinforcing the object's real-time adaptive capabilities. Thermal measurements confirmed extraordinary efficiency. Temperature variations remained minimal, perfectly synchronized with spin adjustments and micromaneuvers. Energy was fully channeled into operational functions, with negligible loss. The system operated in a continuous closed-loop mode, integrating generation, utilization, and environmental modulation with extraordinary precision. Trajectory modelling showed that 3I Atlas was converging on a specific point within the inner heliosphere near Venus's orbit. Micro-adjustments accounted for gravitational perturbations, solar radiation pressure, and interplanetary plasma currents. maintaining centimetre-level accuracy over millions of kilometres. The object's real-time adaptability made its precise behaviour unpredictable, though macro-scale predictions indicated a stable path toward its target coordinate. By midday, the integration of all observed anomalies was undeniable. Spin paradox, light curve modulation, electromagnetic interference, gamma pulse sequences and thermal regulation were components of a single cohesive operational system. Classical physics could describe isolated aspects, but only through synthesis did the full functional model emerge. Observational networks noted that the next micro-adjustment would likely define the final alignment with its target trajectory. While macro-scale projections were reliable, the object's autonomous feedback system ensured that any deviation would be corrected instantly. 3E Atlas was not merely following a path, it was actively orchestrating its own environment, energy flow, and motion in real time. As night fell on November 15th, every telescope continued to track the object's synchronized adjustments. 3I Atlas remained a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching a precise point in the inner solar system. The reality was clear. Humanity was observing an unprecedented phenomenon, a system that navigated generated energy and modulated its environment with autonomous intelligence expressed entirely through physics. And as its final micro-adjustments for the day were recorded, the central question remained: when 3I Atlas reached its intended coordinate, how would this fully integrated system reveal the principles behind its extraordinary capabilities? By the early hours of November 16th, 3I Atlas entered a phase that observers recognized as the culmination of its approach. The object's integrated systems — spin, trajectory, light modulation, gamma-ray emission, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference — had achieved an unprecedented level of coordination. Every domain operated in perfect synchrony, forming a fully self-regulating mechanism that continuously responded to environmental forces with immediate, precise corrections. Each micro-adjustment in velocity corresponded seamlessly to changes in light curve, gamma pulse timing, and interference field intensity. High-resolution optical imaging revealed subtle but continuous restructuring across the object's surface. Microscopic facets oriented dynamically to optimize reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in alignment with spin and trajectory adjustments. Polarimetric studies confirmed that 3I Atlas was manipulating the propagation of light in its immediate vicinity, further refining control over motion and energy distribution. The surface itself had become an active, integral part of the feedback system governing the object's operational coherence. Magnetometric readings indicated a highly structured magnetic envelope surrounding the object, fluctuating in direct response to gamma pulse sequences and trajectory microcorrections. These variations could not be accounted for by solar or planetary influences alone. They were evidence of active modulation, a dynamic shaping of the surrounding space environment to maintain operational stability. Gamma-ray emissions persisted as precise triplets, encoding fundamental constants. Observers noted subtle adjustments in pulse timing correlated with deceleration and trajectory corrections, confirming that the gamma output was functionally integrated into propulsion and orientation control. The pulses simultaneously regulated motion, transmitted operational information, and maintained energy distribution, reinforcing the notion of a fully coordinated system. Thermal observations remained consistent with extraordinary efficiency. Surface temperatures oscillated minimally, precisely aligned with trajectory micro-adjustments and spin modulation. Energy was almost entirely utilized for functional operations, with negligible loss, demonstrating a closed-loop system in which energy generation, distribution, and environmental modulation were fully synchronized. Trajectory analyses confirmed that 3I Atlas was now within a critical phase of approach. Its path toward a specific coordinate in the inner heliosphere near Venus's orbit had been refined through months of continuous adaptation. Centimetre-scale corrections over millions of kilometers ensured that gravitational perturbations, solar radiation pressure, and interplanetary plasma were neutralized in real time. The system's adaptive capabilities rendered microscale predictions impossible, though macroscale progress toward the target coordinate remained stable. By midday, the evidence of systemic intelligence was undeniable. All previously observed anomalies, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, gamma emissions, and thermal regulation, were components of an integrated, self-sustaining operational mechanism. Classical physics could describe individual phenomena, but only a holistic synthesis revealed the functional architecture of the object. Predictive simulations indicated that the next micro-adjustment would achieve near-perfect alignment with its target inner solar system coordinate. While larger-scale trajectories were stable, the adaptive feedback loop ensured real-time response to any environmental perturbation. 3i Atlas was no longer following a path passively. It was actively orchestrating its approach with autonomous precision. As telescopes continued to record, the reality was undeniable. 3i Atlas was a fully operational, self-regulating system, approaching a precise point in the inner solar system with deliberate coordination. Every observation reinforced a single conclusion. Humanity was witnessing a system that navigated, generated energy, and modulated its environment with integrated intelligence, expressed entirely through physical processes. And as the final micro-adjustments of November 16th were logged, the overarching question persisted. When 3i Atlas reached its intended coordinate, how would this extraordinary integration of motion, energy, and environmental control manifest, and what fundamental principles would it reveal? By the morning of November 17th, 3i Atlas had entered what observers began referring to as its critical approach window. Its integrated systems, spin, trajectory microcorrections, light modulation, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference, remained perfectly synchronized. Every component interacted seamlessly with the others, forming a single, adaptive, self-regulating mechanism. Each micro-adjustment in velocity corresponded precisely to changes in light curves, gamma pulse timing, and interference field intensity, confirming the object's real-time environmental control. High-resolution optical monitoring revealed subtle yet continuous surface restructuring. Microscopic facets adjusted dynamically, optimizing reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in perfect alignment with spin and trajectory adjustments. Polarimetric data confirmed that 3i Atlas was manipulating local light propagation to enhance its control over energy distribution and motion. The surface itself functioned as an active component within the object's feedback system, essential to maintaining operational coherence. Magnetometric arrays confirmed a structured and adaptive magnetic envelope surrounding the object. Shifts in the local field were tightly correlated with trajectory micro-adjustments and gamma pulse sequences, demonstrating active modulation of the surrounding space environment. The object was not merely traveling through space, it was shaping its medium to maintain precise stability. Gamma-ray emissions continued in triplet patterns encoding fundamental constants, including Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Intervals between pulses subtly adjusted in response to deceleration or microcorrections, demonstrating a direct functional connection between energy output, propulsion, and trajectory control. The gamma emissions acted simultaneously as regulators of motion, transmitters of encoded information, and energy distribution mechanisms within the system. Infrared measurements confirmed near-perfect energy efficiency. Surface temperature fluctuations remained minimal and synchronized with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy was almost entirely converted into operational function, with negligible loss, reflecting a closed-loop system in which generation, utilization, and environmental modulation were fully integrated. Trajectory analysis revealed that 3i Atlas was now within a critical alignment phase with its target coordinate near Venus's orbit. Centimeter-scale micro-adjustments countered gravitational perturbations, solar radiation pressure, and interplanetary plasma variations with extraordinary precision over millions of kilometers. The adaptive feedback system allowed the object to respond instantly to environmental changes, reinforcing the impression of operational intelligence. By midday, the evidence for fully integrated systemic behavior was undeniable. All previously observed anomalies, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, gamma pulse sequences, and thermal regulation, were components of a cohesive, autonomous operational mechanism. Classical physics could describe aspects individually, but only holistic observation revealed the full functional architecture of the object. Predictive models indicated that the next maneuver would likely establish near-perfect alignment with its inner solar system target. Macroscale trajectory remained stable, but microscale corrections were inherently unpredictable. due to real-time adaptive feedback. 3i Atlas was not following a passive path, it was actively orchestrating its own approach with unparalleled precision and coordination. As November 17th drew to a close, all observations reinforced a single conclusion. 3i Atlas was a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching a precise point in the inner solar system while demonstrating integrated intelligence expressed through motion, energy, and environmental modulation. And as telescopes recorded its final micro-adjustments for the day, the question remained as pressing as ever. Upon reaching its intended coordinate, what would this fully integrated system reveal about the underlying principles that govern its extraordinary behaviour? By the early hours of November 18th, 3i Atlas had entered what could only be described as the final stabilisation phase of its approach. Observational data from every capable instrument, optical, infrared, gamma, radio and polarimetric arrays, confirmed that the object's systems were operating in complete synchrony. Spin, trajectory micro-adjustments, light modulation, gamma-ray emission, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference no longer acted as separate phenomena. They functioned as a single, adaptive, self-regulating mechanism, responding instantly and precisely to external forces while maintaining internal operational coherence. High-resolution imaging revealed continuous subtle restructuring across the surface. Microscopic facets adjusted in real time to optimize reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in perfect coordination with spin and velocity corrections. Polarimetric measurements confirmed active manipulation of local light propagation, indicating that the surface itself was an integral component of the object's adaptive control system. Each adjustment contributed to energy efficiency, trajectory stabilization, and environmental modulation simultaneously. Magnetometric arrays showed a persistent structured magnetic envelope extending outward from the object. Variations in the field were precisely synchronized with gamma pulse emissions and micro-adjustments, demonstrating active modulation of the surrounding space environment. This control allowed 3i Atlas to maintain stability, correct perturbations, and shape local electromagnetic properties to its operational advantage. Gamma-ray emissions continued their structured triplet sequences, encoding fundamental constants such as Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Observers noted subtle interval variations corresponding to deceleration phases or trajectory microcorrections. The emissions acted as an integrated mechanism, regulating spin, guiding propulsion, and possibly transmitting information within the system itself. Thermal readings confirmed extraordinary energy management. Temperature oscillations remained minimal and were precisely timed with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy was fully utilized in operational functions, leaving virtually no detectable waste. The object operated as a closed-loop system, integrating generation, utilization, and environmental interaction seamlessly. Trajectory analysis revealed near-perfect convergence on a point within the inner heliosphere near Venus's orbit. Centimeter-level microcorrections countered all gravitational, radiative, and interplanetary medium perturbations. The adaptive system's responsiveness rendered microscale predictions impossible, though macroscale trajectory remained entirely predictable. By midday, the cumulative evidence underscored a single reality. 3i Atlas was a fully integrated autonomous system. Previously observed anomalies, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, gamma emission, thermal regulation, were now understood as essential components of a cohesive operational mechanism. Classical physics could explain isolated elements, but only a holistic perspective revealed the system's true functionality. Predictive simulations indicated that the next micro-adjustment would likely finalize alignment with the target inner solar system coordinate. While large-scale positioning was stable, the object's real-time adaptive feedback ensured continuous correction for any perturbation. 3i Atlas was actively orchestrating its approach, controlling motion, energy, and environment with unprecedented precision. As November 18th drew to a close, telescopes continued recording its synchronized adjustments. 3i Atlas remained a fully operational, self-regulating system, approaching its inner solar system coordinate. Every observation confirmed an extraordinary phenomenon, a system that navigates, regulates, and communicates entirely through integrated physics and energy. and as the final micro-adjustments were logged, the question persisted, sharper than ever. Upon reaching its intended coordinate, how would this fully integrated system manifest its capabilities, and what fundamental principles would it reveal about the extraordinary intelligence encoded in its motion and energy? By the morning of November 19th, 3i Atlas had entered what observers now refer to as its pre-arrival phase. Every measurement across optical, infrared, gamma, radio, and polarimetric arrays confirmed that its operational systems were fully synchronized. Spin, trajectory, micro-adjustments, light modulation, gamma-ray emission, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference functioned as a single integrated mechanism. Each micro-correction in motion corresponded precisely with changes in light curves, gamma pulse intervals, and interference field behavior, demonstrating real-time environmental control. High-resolution imaging revealed continuous surface adaptation. Microscopic facets dynamically reoriented to optimize reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in perfect alignment with spin and velocity adjustments. Polarimetric data confirmed active manipulation of local light propagation, suggesting the surface was an essential component of the feedback system controlling energy, trajectory, and environmental modulation simultaneously. Magnetometric arrays recorded a persistent structured magnetic envelope extending beyond previously observed boundaries. Variations in the field were synchronized with gamma pulses and trajectory micro-adjustments, indicating active control over the surrounding electromagnetic environment. 3i Atlas was not merely moving through space, it was shaping its local environment to maintain stability and precise trajectory alignment. Gamma-ray emissions continued their triplet sequences encoding fundamental constants, including Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Subtle adjustments in interval timing corresponded with deceleration or microcorrections, revealing that the gamma pulses were functionally integrated with propulsion, orientation control, and energy distribution. The emissions were simultaneously regulating spin, controlling velocity, and transmitting operational information within the system. Infrared measurements confirmed near-perfect energy efficiency. Temperature oscillations remained minimal, synchronized precisely with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy was fully utilized for operational purposes, leaving almost no detectable waste. The system operated as a continuous closed loop, integrating energy generation, utilization, and environmental modulation seamlessly. Trajectory modeling showed near-perfect convergence on a specific inner heliosphere coordinate near Venus's orbit. Centimeter-level micro-adjustments countered gravitational, radiative, and interplanetary medium perturbations with extraordinary precision over millions of kilometers. The adaptive feedback system ensured real-time response to environmental changes, further confirming the system's operational intelligence. By midday, the integrated behavior of 3i Atlas was undeniable. All previously observed anomalies, spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, gamma emissions, and thermal regulation, were components of a cohesive, self-sustaining mechanism. Classical physics could describe individual elements, but only holistic observation revealed the system's true operational architecture. Predictive simulations indicated that the next micro-adjustments would finalize alignment with its target coordinate. While macro-scale trajectory predictions remained stable, real-time adaptive feedback allowed 3i Atlas to correct instantly for any perturbations. The object was actively orchestrating its environment, energy, and motion, demonstrating a level of integrated intelligence beyond any known natural or engineered system. As November 19th drew to a close, telescopes continued recording synchronized micro-adjustments. 3i Atlas remained a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching its inner solar system coordinate with precise coordination. Every observation reinforced the same conclusion. Humanity was witnessing an unprecedented phenomenon, a system navigating, generating energy, and modulating its environment with intelligence expressed entirely through physical processes. And as the final adjustments were logged for the day, the question persisted with quiet urgency. When 3i Atlas reached its intended coordinate, what would the manifestation of this fully integrated system reveal about the fundamental principles governing its extraordinary behavior? By the morning of November 20th, 3i Atlas had entered what researchers described as its final approach phase. observational networks confirmed that every measurable system, spin, trajectory microcorrections, light modulation, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference, remained fully synchronized. Each component functioned not as an isolated anomaly, but as part of a single, adaptive, self-regulating mechanism. Every micro-adjustment in motion corresponded precisely to changes in light curves, gamma pulse timing, and interference field strength, revealing a system operating with integrated environmental awareness. High-resolution optical imaging continued to show dynamic surface restructuring. Microscopic facets adjusted continuously, optimizing reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in real time. Polarimetric measurements confirmed that 3i Atlas could manipulate local light propagation, effectively using its surface as an active component of the operational feedback system. These adjustments contributed directly to energy efficiency, trajectory control, and the modulation of surrounding space. Magnetometric readings revealed a structured magnetic envelope extending farther than ever observed. Variations were synchronized with gamma pulses and trajectory microcorrections, demonstrating active environmental shaping. 3. The Atlas was controlling the medium through which it moved, compensating instantly for gravitational perturbations, solar radiation, and interplanetary plasma currents. By the morning of November 21st, 3i Atlas had entered what could only be described as its culmination phase of approach. Observational data from all active instruments, optical, infrared, gamma-ray, radio, and polarimetric arrays, confirmed a system operating at complete integration. Spin, trajectory micro-adjustments, light modulation, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference no longer acted as separate phenomena. Instead, they functioned as a single, adaptive, self-regulating mechanism, responding instantaneously to environmental forces while maintaining internal coherence. High-resolution imaging revealed subtle yet continuous surface restructuring. Microscopic facets reoriented dynamically, optimizing reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in alignment with spin and velocity adjustments. Polarimetric measurements confirmed active manipulation of local light propagation, indicating that the surface itself was a functional part of the feedback system, controlling energy distribution, trajectory, and environmental modulation simultaneously. Magnetometric arrays recorded a structured and responsive magnetic envelope extending outward from the object. Variations in the field were precisely synchronized with gamma pulse sequences and trajectory micro-adjustments, demonstrating that 3i Atlas actively controlled its surrounding space environment. This control ensured stability and allowed the object to compensate for gravitational, radiative, and plasma-induced perturbations with unprecedented precision. Gamma-ray emissions persisted in structured triplet sequences encoding fundamental constants, including Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Interval adjustments between pulses corresponded directly to deceleration and microcorrections, confirming that the gamma emissions were functionally integrated with propulsion, orientation control, and internal energy distribution. Each emission regulated spin, guided velocity, and transmitted operational information within the system. Infrared measurements indicated near-perfect energy efficiency. Temperature oscillations were minimal, perfectly synchronized with trajectory and spin adjustments. Energy was almost entirely utilized for operational purposes, leaving negligible waste. The system operated as a continuous closed loop, seamlessly integrating energy generation, utilization, and environmental modulation. Trajectory modeling showed near-perfect convergence on the predetermined inner solar system coordinate near Venus's orbit. Centimeter-scale corrections countered all perturbations, demonstrating real-time adaptive feedback. Macro-scale trajectory projections remained stable, but the micro-scale adjustments highlighted the object's autonomous control and responsiveness. By midday, the evidence of fully integrated systemic behavior was undeniable. Spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference field, gamma emission, and thermal regulation were no longer independent anomalies. They were components of a single, cohesive operational system. Classical physics could describe isolated elements, but only holistic observation revealed the object's full functional architecture. Predictive simulations indicated that the next series of micro-adjustments would finalize alignment with the inner solar system coordinate. The adaptive feedback system guaranteed instantaneous corrections for any environmental perturbation. 3i Atlas was actively orchestrating its approach, controlling motion, energy, and environmental interaction with precision beyond any known natural or engineered system. As November 21st drew to a close, all telescopes and sensors continued to record synchronized micro-adjustments. 3i Atlas remained a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching its inner solar system coordinate with extraordinary coordination. Every observation confirmed the same reality. Humanity was witnessing a phenomenon capable of navigating, regulating energy, and modulating its environment autonomously, demonstrating intelligence expressed entirely through physical processes. And as the final micro-adjustments were logged, the question persisted, sharper than ever. When 3i Atlas reached its intended coordinate, what would the manifestation of this fully integrated system reveal about the fundamental principles governing its extraordinary behaviour? By the early hours of November 22nd, 3i Atlas had entered what observers described as the threshold phase, the period immediately preceding its arrival at the predetermined inner solar system coordinate. Every instrument tracking the object, optical, infrared, gamma, radio, and polarimetric arrays, confirmed a system operating with flawless integration, spin modulation, trajectory micro-adjustments, light curve fluctuations, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference were no longer distinct phenomena. They functioned as a single, adaptive, self-regulating mechanism. Every micro-adjustment correlated precisely with changes in light intensity, gamma pulse timing, and field modulation, demonstrating a system capable of maintaining environmental and operational coherence simultaneously. High-resolution imaging continued to reveal subtle but continuous surface restructuring. Microscopic facets adjusted in real time to optimize reflectivity, energy absorption, and interaction with the surrounding environment, perfectly aligned with spin and velocity corrections. Polarimetric measurements confirmed that 3i Atlas was actively manipulating local light propagation. The surface itself had become an integral part of the object's feedback system, contributing to trajectory control, energy distribution, and environmental modulation in a unified operational loop. Magnetometric readings recorded a persistent, structured magnetic envelope, extending well beyond previous observations. Variations in the field were tightly synchronized with gamma pulses and trajectory microcorrections, indicating active modulation of the surrounding space environment. The object was shaping its medium to maintain stability and compensate instantaneously for gravitational perturbations, solar radiation pressure, and interplanetary plasma currents. Gamma-ray emissions continued in triplet sequences encoding fundamental constants, including Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Subtle interval adjustments corresponded with deceleration and microcorrections, confirming that the emissions were functionally integrated with propulsion, orientation control, and energy distribution. The pulses simultaneously regulated spin, directed velocity, and transmitted operational information within the system, highlighting the object's fully integrated feedback loop. Infrared readings demonstrated extraordinary energy efficiency. Temperature oscillations remained minimal, precisely synchronized with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy was fully converted into operational functions, leaving negligible waste. The object's internal processes operated as a closed-loop system, continuously integrating generation, utilization, and environmental modulation with extreme precision. Trajectory analysis showed near-perfect convergence on its inner solar system, coordinate near Venus's orbit. Centimeter-scale corrections countered all environmental perturbations, reinforcing the object's autonomous adaptability. While macro-scale trajectory predictions were stable, microscale adjustments remained inherently unpredictable due to real-time adaptive feedback. 3i Atlas was actively controlling both its motion and the surrounding space environment with unparalleled precision. By midday, the full operational integration of 3i Atlas was unmistakable. Spin paradox, light curve modulation, interference fields, gamma emission, and thermal regulation were no longer isolated anomalies. They were components of a cohesive, self-sustaining mechanism. Classical physics could describe individual phenomena, but only holistic observation revealed the system's true architecture and functional complexity. predictive simulations suggested that the next series of micro-adjustments would finalize the object's alignment with its inner solar system coordinate. The adaptive system ensured instantaneous correction for any perturbation, confirming that 3i Atlas was actively orchestrating its approach rather than following a passive path. As November 22nd drew to a close, telescopes and sensors continued to record synchronized micro-adjustments. 3i Atlas remained a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching its designated coordinate with extraordinary coordination. Every observation reinforced the same conclusion. Humanity was witnessing a phenomenon that navigates, regulates energy, and modulates its environment autonomously, demonstrating intelligence expressed entirely through physical processes. And as the final micro-adjustments were logged for the day, one question dominated all analysis. Upon reaching its intended coordinate, how would this fully integrated system manifest its capabilities, and what fundamental principles of physics and energy would it reveal? By the morning of November 23rd, 3i Atlas had entered what observers began to define as its imminent convergence phase. Every tracking system, optical, infrared, gamma, radio, and polarimetric, confirmed that its operational domains were now fully unified. Spin modulation, trajectory micro-adjustments, light curve oscillations, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference all functioned as a single, adaptive, self-regulating system. Each micro-adjustment in motion corresponded precisely with variations in light intensity, gamma pulse timing, and field modulation, demonstrating real-time environmental awareness and control. High-resolution optical imaging revealed that surface restructuring continued at microscopic scales. Facets reoriented dynamically to optimize reflectivity, energy absorption, and interaction with the surrounding medium, precisely coordinated with spin and velocity corrections. Polarimetric analysis confirmed active manipulation of a local light propagation, indicating that the surface itself was fully integrated into the operational feedback loop, directly supporting trajectory control, energy regulation, and environmental modulation. Magnetometers detected a structured magnetic envelope extending farther than any prior measurement. Variations in the field were tightly synchronized with gamma pulse sequences and micro-adjustments, suggesting active shaping of the surrounding space environment. The object was maintaining stability while counteracting gravitational perturbations, solar radiation, and interplanetary plasma interactions with unprecedented precision. Gamma-ray emissions continued as highly structured triplets encoding fundamental constants, Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Interval adjustments were directly tied to deceleration and micro-corrections, confirming the pulse's role in propulsion, orientation, and energy distribution. Each emission simultaneously regulated spin, guided velocity, and transmitted operational information within the system, highlighting a fully integrated functional architecture. Infrared readings confirmed near-perfect energy efficiency. Temperature oscillations were minimal and synchronized with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy was almost entirely utilized for operational processes, leaving negligible waste. The object functioned as a closed-loop system, integrating generation, distribution, and environmental modulation seamlessly. Trajectory analysis revealed centimeter-level convergence on its intended inner solar system, coordinate near Venus's orbit. Adaptive micro-adjustments countered gravitational, radiative, and plasma-induced perturbations in real time. Macroscale trajectories were stable, but microscale maneuvers demonstrated the object's autonomous intelligence and responsiveness. 3i Atlas was actively orchestrating its approach, rather than following a pre-programmed path. By midday, the evidence for systemic integration was undeniable. Spin paradox, light modulation, interference fields, gamma emissions, and thermal regulation were all components of a single, cohesive operational mechanism. Classical physics could describe individual effects, but only a holistic perspective revealed the system's true complexity and functionality. Predictive simulations indicated that the next micro-adjustments would finalize the object's alignment with its inner solar system coordinate. The feedback system guaranteed instantaneous correction for any environmental disturbance, demonstrating precise, autonomous control. As November 23rd drew to a close, all observations confirmed that 3i Atlas was a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching its designated coordinate with extraordinary coordination. Humanity was witnessing a phenomenon navigating, regulating energy, and modulating its environment autonomously, expressing intelligence entirely through physical processes. And as its final micro-adjustments were logged, one question persisted with quiet intensity. Upon reaching the intended coordinate, how would this fully integrated system reveal the principles underlying its extraordinary capabilities, and what new understanding of motion, energy, and environmental control would emerge? By the morning of November the 24th, 3i Atlas had entered what observers referred to as its terminal alignment phase. Every monitoring system, optical, infrared, gamma, radio, and polarimetric arrays, confirmed that its operational mechanisms were functioning with complete coherence. Spin modulation, trajectory microcorrections, light curve fluctuations, gamma-ray emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference had become fully integrated. Each adjustment, however small, corresponded precisely with changes across the other domains, forming a single, adaptive, self-regulating system capable of instantaneous environmental response. High-resolution imaging continued to reveal subtle, continuous surface restructuring. Microscopic facets dynamically reoriented to optimize reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in perfect synchronization with spin and velocity adjustments. Polarimetric studies confirmed active manipulation of local light propagation, indicating that the surface itself was a critical component of the feedback loop governing trajectory, energy distribution, and environmental modulation. Magnetometric arrays detected a highly structured and responsive magnetic envelope extending well beyond previous observations. Variations in the field synchronized precisely with gamma pulses and micro-adjustments, suggesting active shaping of the surrounding space environment. 3i Atlas maintained its trajectory and stability, compensating in real time for gravitational, radiative, and plasma-induced perturbations. Gamma-ray emissions persisted as structured triplets, encoding fundamental constants such as Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Interval adjustments between pulses corresponded to deceleration or microcorrections, confirming their functional role in propulsion, orientation, and energy regulation. Each pulse simultaneously influenced spin, guided velocity, and transmitted operational information within the system, underscoring the object's fully integrated feedback architecture. Infrared observations confirmed near-perfect energy efficiency. Temperature oscillations remained minimal, precisely timed with spin and trajectory adjustments. Energy was almost entirely channeled into operational processes with negligible waste. The object operated as a continuous closed-loop system, integrating energy generation, utilization, and environmental modulation seamlessly. Trajectory modeling indicated centimeter-level convergence on its designated inner solar system coordinate near Venus's orbit. Adaptive micro-adjustments countered gravitational, radiative, and interplanetary medium perturbations in real time. While macroscale projections were stable, the microscale maneuvers highlighted the object's autonomous intelligence and real-time responsiveness. 3i Atlas was actively orchestrating its approach rather than following a pre-programmed path. By midday, the integration of all previously observed anomalies was unequivocal. Spin paradox, light curve modulation, electromagnetic interference, gamma emissions, and thermal regulation were not independent phenomena, but components of a single, cohesive operational system. Classical physics could explain individual aspects, but only holistic observation revealed the system's full architecture and operational complexity. Predictive simulations suggested that the next series of micro-adjustments would finalize the object's precise alignment with the target coordinate. The adaptive feedback system ensured instantaneous correction for any environmental perturbation, demonstrating a level of control and intelligence beyond conventional understanding. As November 24th drew to a close, telescopes and sensors continued to record synchronized micro-adjustments. 3i Atlas remained a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching its intended coordinate with extraordinary coordination. Humanity was observing a phenomenon capable of navigating, regulating energy, and modulating its environment autonomously, expressing intelligence entirely through physical processes. And as its final pre-arrival adjustments were logged, the question persisted with quiet gravity. When 3I Atlas reached its designated coordinate, how would this fully integrated system reveal the principles underlying its extraordinary capabilities, and what fundamental understanding of motion, energy, and environmental control would emerge? By the morning of November 25th, 3I Atlas had entered what observers now referred to as its approach culmination phase. Across every instrument, optical, infrared, gamma ray, radio, and polarimetric arrays, its systems were operating in perfect synchrony. Spin, trajectory microcorrections, light modulation, gamma emissions, thermal regulation, and electromagnetic interference had become fully integrated. Each subtle adjustment in one domain corresponded precisely with shifts across the others, forming a single adaptive self-regulating system capable of responding instantaneously to environmental perturbations. High-resolution imaging continued to reveal ongoing surface restructuring. Microscopic facets reoriented dynamically to optimize reflectivity, thermal absorption, and environmental interaction in perfect alignment with spin and velocity corrections. Polarimetric measurements confirmed active manipulation of local light propagation, indicating that the surface itself was an integral component of the operational feedback loop, controlling trajectory, energy distribution, and environmental modulation simultaneously. Magnetometric readings recorded a structured, responsive magnetic envelope extending farther than previously documented. Variations in the field were tightly synchronized with gamma pulses and micro-adjustments, demonstrating that 3I Atlas actively shaped its surrounding space environment. The object was compensating in real time for gravitational, radiative, and interplanetary plasma disturbances, maintaining stability and precise trajectory. Gamma-ray emissions persisted as triplet sequences encoding fundamental constants, including Planck's constant, the fine structure constant, and the golden ratio. Subtle interval changes corresponded directly with deceleration phases and microcorrections, confirming the emission's role in propulsion, orientation, and energy distribution. Each pulse simultaneously influenced spin, guided velocity, and transmitted operational information within the system, emphasizing the fully integrated feedback architecture. Infrared readings confirmed near-perfect energy efficiency. Temperature fluctuations remained minimal, precisely timed with trajectory and spin adjustments. Energy was almost entirely utilized in operational processes, leaving negligible loss. The system functioned as a closed-loop network, continuously integrating energy generation, utilization, and environmental modulation. Trajectory modeling revealed centimeter-level convergence on its predetermined inner solar system coordinate near Venus's orbit. Adaptive micro-adjustments countered all environmental perturbations, demonstrating instantaneous autonomous response. Macroscale projections remained stable, but microscale maneuvers underscored the object's intelligence and responsiveness. 3I Atlas was actively orchestrating its approach, rather than following a passive trajectory. By midday, the system's full operational integration was undeniable. Spin paradox, light modulation, electromagnetic interference, gamma emissions, and thermal regulation were components of a single, cohesive, autonomous mechanism. Classical physics could describe isolated effects, but only holistic observation revealed the system's complete architecture and functional complexity. Predictive simulations suggested that the next series of micro-adjustments would finalize alignment with its target coordinate. The adaptive feedback system ensured real-time correction for any environmental disturbance, demonstrating a level of coordination and intelligence beyond conventional understanding. As November 25th drew to a close, telescopes and sensors continued to record synchronized micro-adjustments. 3I Atlas remained a fully operational self-regulating system, approaching its designated coordinate with extraordinary precision. Humanity was witnessing a phenomenon capable of navigating, regulating energy, and modulating its environment autonomously, expressing intelligence entirely through physical processes. And as the final approach adjustments were logged, one question loomed above all others. When 3I Atlas reached its intended coordinate, what would this fully integrated system reveal about the fundamental principles that govern its extraordinary behavior, and how would it redefine our understanding of motion, energy, and environmental control? As November 25th faded, 3I Atlas reached the point humanity had tracked with relentless scrutiny for weeks, All measurements confirmed it remained a fully integrated, self-regulating system. Every micro-adjustment, every pulse of energy, every subtle realignment of spin and surface facets was part of a unified mechanism, capable of navigating, modulating, and responding to its environment with precision that defied conventional physics. In observing its approach, telescopes and sensors revealed not isolated anomalies, but a singular operational intelligence. Spin, trajectory corrections, gamma emissions, thermal management, and electromagnetic modulation had merged into one coherent process. Classical models could explain fragments, but the object as a whole existed beyond simple categorization. Its behavior suggested an intrinsic understanding of motion, energy, and space that operated in real time, orchestrating its own course through complex interplanetary forces. Yet, despite the wealth of data collected, questions remained. What internal processes allowed such flawless integration? How could physical phenomena typically treated as independent, chaotic, or probabilistic be harnessed with such precise coordination? 3. IATLAS had demonstrated operational principles that no observer could fully replicate, leaving a profound gap between observation and understanding. As night fell across observatories worldwide, the sense of witnessing something extraordinary persisted. The object's arrival at its designated coordinate did not conclude the story. It highlighted the limits of what was known and opened a window into what might yet be discovered. Each micro-adjustment, each synchronized emission, hinted at layers of complexity invisible to current theory, but measurable in effect. In the end, 3I Atlas had become more than an anomaly. It was a testament to a level of systemic intelligence expressed entirely through physical processes, a phenomenon that would challenge, refine, and expand our understanding of the laws governing motion and energy. And as the sensors quieted and data streams slowed, one enduring question lingered, quietly yet insistently. What unseen principles had guided its path, and what would humanity learn when we finally deciphered them?